What's going on, everybody? It's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and well, here we are. Here we are. I've been hyping up this video for the longest time at this point to do the meme game room tour, and honestly, it's been a nightmare to do. I've been recording this in so many different ways, so many different takes, so many different shots. I've got lighting, I've messed around, I've tried to learn how to use it and all as well, and honestly, it's just so difficult to do. I did so many different shots, so many different reshoots, so many different everything that eventually I just gave up. So I'm just going to do it this way. Here we are. Welcome to the game room. So first off, we'll just take a quick spin, then we'll go back, have a look at everything again, then we'll break into each thing in individual detail, okay? So, first off, everything up here is the way it usually is. Gave it a little clean before we started, but everything is in its usual place, okay? So, first off, there's I suppose you call it retro corner, maybe. Over there we have the likes of Super Nintendo, N64, NES, Famicom, that kind of stuff. There's also a bunch of handheld consoles, I guess. You've got all my 2DSs, 3DSs, PSPs, DS. There's a couple of other stuff, but we'll get into the full detail of it when we go back and look through the entire thing. Bunch of collector's editions, too many collector's editions. Trust me, you'll see it in animated. Far too many collector's editions. We got some more. I won't go into detail about all the collectibles and stuff because there'll be plenty of time for that when we go into individual detail. So we can skip most of them at first. Here we got the PS4, Xbox One, all handful of games that are on it. We got ourselves the Gamecube as well. Oh, it's moving down. We got some stuff in the way, but that'll all be moved eventually soon. We got the PS1 in there. We got the PS2 in there as well. And now in the bottom, we got PS1, Dreamcast, PS2. Very small amount of Sega Saturn, TurboGrafx CD, stuff like that in there as well. So, usual stuff, covered it. I think we have our little unboxing of all that before. Resident Evil 2 board game, bunch of editions. Lighting, etc. is all just kind of in there. Tripod, all the usual. Big stacks of books, we'll not worry about them for now. But we will worry about the Xbox 360 section. There's another shelf at the bottom, which we'll worry about once we get down to it as well. We got some more figures, a figurine corner, a collectible corner, whatever you want to call it. Also a bunch more of collector's editions too. And moving over, we got some more. We got our Master System. We got our Mega Drive. We got our Sega Saturn. We got a Wii U, believe it or not. And in there, which don't worry, we'll dig out. We got our Wii stuff as well. Big stack of books too, all in the same series, believe it or not. Stacked this high. CD soundtracks for various games and other stuff as well. More books underneath it. Party stuff, couple of extra accessories, controllers, things like that as well. More collectibles, which we'll eventually get into. And what I will call the Wall of Shame. Depending on who you ask, at least anyway, it'll be called the Wall of Shame. We got a bunch of consoles. I mean a bunch. And there's a big box of stuff in the way with 2 or 3 things obstructed. Yes, stuff behind it is jam-packed. So is this box. It's jam-packed. It's completely packed and full of controllers, believe it or not. Now, hold up. I know what you're thinking. What you probably heard me say, you probably think, oh yeah, there's a lot of controllers in there. No. It is packed full of controllers. To the point where I have to put all the stuff on top of it to keep it closed. Because otherwise the stuff would be on the floor. Although it's kind of a good situation for it anyway too. Anyway, while we're here, what do we got? Various random, I guess they're extras really. We got some PS1 games, some Mega CD games, some PC games, which will be like these bad boys, some Dreamcast as well. We got some Switch games, some Vita games. Funny enough, we have more Vita games than the Switch games because, well, there's not really anything to play on the Switch at the moment. Got some additional Xbox One games, Xbox 360 games. We have, what are they? Game Boy Advance. 1 or 2 Game Boy Color games in there as well. Additional PS2 games. Additional Blu-ray. And now, remember when I said I had a lot of collector's editions? like a lot of collector's editions. Yeah, that's everything you've seen so far. What we have here, what we have here, and what we have here. It's probably about maybe 60% of the collector's editions. The other ones, yeah, you'll see them now in a second anyway. Of course, naturally, they go all the way down to the floor. We'll worry about that in another part of the video later. Other than that, we got a little bit more. We got our HD DVDs. That's right, I was originally a supporter of HD DVD. Naturally, I still kept them, because why wouldn't I? I have 2 drives just for those purposes. PS3 games, OG Xbox games, more collectibles. In this case, it's the primary focus is kind of the, I guess you could call them the amiibo. Not really, but it depends on what way you look at it. You'll notice most of my amiibo are only from Fire Emblem, because I wanted the Fire Emblem ones. I love it. The rest of that, not too much. I mean, a Yoshi I bought originally. You know, there's no point in me explaining all this. I'll get back to you with the collectibles later. Other than that, we got our Blu-ray. This is the proper Blu-ray setup. We'll worry about, again, all of that in detail a little bit later. Got some arcade stuff there, again, later. And the rest of the collector's editions. That's right, the rest of it all. There's so much. Luckily, I'm a Tetris master, so pretty much all that gets handled in there too. It's kind of warm these days, so I do got a little bit of a fan. It also doubles up as a heater during the winter. And there's one of my lights. One of my 2 lights, which I might still eventually need to use at some random point. But yeah, everything is in there. It's certainly a setup. And lastly, last but by no means least, just some more handheld stuff. PSP, DS, and 3DS. A couple of other things in there as well. I got some Game Boys of all things, believe it or not. But that's basically it. Let's take one last quick spin around at everything. This is the way it's usually set up. This is the way it's always kind of, with maybe 1 or 2 slight minor variations. But overall, it's pretty much like this the entire time. So what we'll do is we'll end this little part here, flick on over, and we'll start looking through some individual sections. We'll go through some individual stuff. I'm not going to talk about everything because, well, fuck, I'd be here for so long. But yeah, that's it. That's it all. That's the intro. It's the starter. Anyway, let's get going. Let's move along. So we'll start off with our little retro corner, if you will. Now, yeah, okay, fair enough. It's not exactly retro, but we have the Halo 3 specifically, and the Reach Legendary Editions. Now, it's just the stuff with them, but we'll move along. So other than that, let's go. We got some SNES games, some box stuff, some loose stuff, some JP stuff. We also got some, there's a couple of Mega Drive hidden in there too. We got our lovely little handheld collectible, or whatever you want to call them. The handheld console nook. There's, well, far too much in there. We'll get into in a minute. We got some more SNES games. I've got so much space taken up in this one that even my N64 games are starting to bleed over. We got some NES, we got some SNES, we got some Famicom. We got a nice large Super Metroid and some Marcus Phoenix. Now, we'll take a quick gander of everything what we got in here, or at least the important stuff. So let's take a bit of a quick look anyway into the retro corner. What we want to do is, I'm not going to go through everything, but I want to talk about some specific stuff, some stories, some memories, some feels, all that too. Because, I mean, there's pictures, you can check out the video and all as well, and you can see what's in there, but we want the important stuff. So, with everything we got up here, we're not going to really talk about the NES stuff. That's only more recent. We're not going to talk about some of the Japanese, I'm trying to do this backwards, some of the Japanese Super Famicom stuff, even though there is Suikoden Densetsu 3, which is Secret of Mana 2, amazing game. But I want to talk about a couple of things. First thing I want to talk about is this bad boy. That's right, Q, you filthy casual, you don't have a boxed copy of Chrono Trigger from America. What is this? I know. I actually got this. This was the very first game I ever imported. And I was probably about 18, 19 at the time. It was It might even be like 17. It was a long, long time ago. In the tail end, it was during the PS2 era when I got this. Now, I had played it once or twice previously on an emulator, but I wanted the real deal. I was like, wow, this is amazing, I need this. Now, because, first off, okay, these little dust covers at the bottom, this blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. Never seen it before. Because our Super Nintendo games over here in Europe, they don't have that. So when this came with it, I was like, oh, actually, you know what? This didn't come with it. This came with a different game, and I put it on it. But when I did get this, it absolutely blew my mind. Now, you're probably wondering, Q, how did you play Chrono Trigger, one of the best games of all time? How did you play this on your European Super Nintendo? Well, boyos, I had this bad boy. Now, this is a weird looking cartridge, I agree. But it gets weirder. There's 2 connections on it. So what you do is on the top, you put your American Super Nintendo game. And here on the back, you put your European Super Nintendo game. And it tricks the Super Nintendo and it boots it up so you can play imported games on your Super Nintendo. It was great. It came in so handy. However, we did eventually run into a little bit of a problem. That game that caused a problem was this. One of the earlier imports of my games, because I figured, you know what? I have Chrono Trigger. I have ways of playing imported US games that we never got, because we never got Chrono Trigger here on the Super Nintendo back in the day. We never got Earthbound on the Super Nintendo back in the day. So I decided I'd import it. I'd bring another one added to the collection. However, I'm sure many of you out there already know that Earthbound cannot be played on a different region console. When you boot this up using my little region unlock card, it gives you a splash screen that says, oh, this game cannot be played, blah, 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 designed for a specific different region, blah, blah, blah. It's the same when I tried to boot it up real quick to test it out on my analog Super NT. When I had it set to European mode, I put in this for the laugh, and it gave me the same problem, the same error. Now, that is when I imported my US Super Nintendo. That is when I played this. Also, this is the game that came with the dust cover. I personally value, if you will, Chrono Trigger a bit more, so I took it off this and put it on Chrono Trigger. But it's kind of crazy. Like, I still have them. And because it was so long ago, like nowadays Chrono Trigger is expensive, Earthbound is expensive. I picked these up for peanuts. I think this cost me like 20, 25 euro back in the day. This cost me like roughly the same. And now this is like a nearly 200 euro game, just for the cartridge alone. Madness. But, I mean, that's pretty much it for the top part of it. There is one other one I'll briefly talk about. I wasn't really going to. I got this nice and cheap. Now, this is a US copy as well, of course. But I got this nice and cheap when I was in the US back in 2010. There was a small retro game store that had 2 locations. I believe one of them was where I picked it up, and the other one was, I think it was in Chicago or St. Louis or something like that. And I'd went in because I knew this was previously here, but it had been shipped to the other store temporarily to try sell there. Now I went in and I said, listen, I really, really need this. How quick can you get it here? I'm leaving in like 2 or 3 days. How quick can you get it? He goes, I'll have it. He got it. I love Harvest Moon. This was my proper first way to play this, because we all know that importing or emulating Super Nintendo N64 games is not the easiest thing in the world, and it's not the most reliable thing in the world. Now, of course, it was eventually released on the Wii U Virtual Console of all things, but before that, this was my bad boy. This was the real deal. Now, believe it or not, it's hard to see, but I've cleaned it up a lot. There was a lot of crayon and stuff all over it. I'm afraid to take the sticker off because it's kind of peeling off the actual label too. I'll deal with it. You know, as retro game collectors and all, we all have those games that we've picked up at some point that have stickers or names or something on it. Like, hell, look at the back of it. There's previously stickers taken off it and stuff too. It's... Ooh lad. But that's about it. I mean, I could go into detail about Donkey Kong Country, which I have in here, and I mean, let me see, Donkey Kong, where are we? You can't really see Donkey Kong Country. It's such an amazing game. It's one of the greatest Super Nintendo platformers of all time, but at the same time, we all know that. I don't really have any super specific stories other than just fond childhood memories of just how good the game is and how much I enjoyed myself playing it with my friends or by myself. So, we'll move on to our next little shelf and we'll see what's going on in there. So there's not a crazy, absolute, massive amount of stuff to talk about in this little one, but there are one or two things I want to bring up. Maybe Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 4, or, well, the same game, or Final Fantasy 3/6, maybe Illusion of Time, that's Illusion of Gaia for you guys out there, Secret of Evermore, Mystic Quest, specifically I definitely want to talk about Secret of Mana, maybe a little bit of Secret of Mana 2, some Star Blazer, Soul Blazer, and for those of you who don't know, Starwing. That's right, it's not called Star Fox here in Europe. But anyway, we'll get a couple in there. I'll try not to drag it out too much. So I'm going to roll the two of these in together just for the sake of it because it's, well, my hair is not cooperating today. It's only more appropriate because we got Final Fantasy 2 or Final Fantasy 4 and Final Fantasy 3, aka Final Fantasy 6. Now, these games were not released here back in the day. We first only ever got them on PS1 here in Europe because our first proper Final Fantasy game was Final Fantasy 7. Everyone can hate on me for that all you want. But, I mean, just the legacy these games have, and they're so good. And, like, everything they mean. Like, I just recently replayed Final Fantasy 6, and I'm currently in the process of replaying Final Fantasy 4, and they're just so good. It's so ridiculously good. These were some of the big games that were always advertised in magazines and stuff to me back in the day. Just like Chrono Trigger, just like Earthbound, a few others too, that we never got here back in the day. I keep looking at myself, despite the camera being here. But it was so disheartening, and it was something I always wanted. I always tell the story several times over about Chrono Trigger. There was an official Nintendo magazine at one point back in the day, it was Super Nintendo, and the cover art was Chrono Trigger. And in the middle they had like a giant 6 or 8 or 10 page section, all to do specifically with Chrono Trigger. And it even culminated in the center pullout of a 2-page centerfold poster of the entire Millennium Fair in its gorgeous 16-bit glory. And then we never got the game. That was crushing. These games, Final Fantasy 4 and 6, they suffered the same fate. And I suffered the same fate because of it. Brutal, brutal stuff. What else we got in here that's important? One of my early, what I attribute, one of the main reasons I love JRPGs as my favourite genre. Illusion of Time. It's Illusion of Gaia for you guys out there in America. Also, if you're catching reflections, I've got some of the better games and some of my favourite games and whatnot in these cool, like, plastic box covers. So, it helps keep them safe. Illusion of Time. Such a damn good game. Made by Enix. And it was just so different. Oh my god, I still have the price tag back in here and everything. It's not really focusing on it properly, but it was so good. Part of it's kind of technically almost a trilogy. I didn't get to play the other two games until much, much later. I only got to play one of them in about 2006, maybe 2000. No, it would have been about 2008. I properly got to play Terranigma, excluding little minor forays into emulation, and Soul Blazer, which I actually only bought last year, the end of 2018. Now, I'm probably going to catch some flack over this next one, but I don't care. I will die on this hill easily. So you guys might know this game. You might know it by a slightly different name, but overall, you probably know the game. Mystic Quest Legend. Now, to you American guys out there, this is Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. We never had a proper Final Fantasy installment in Europe by this time, so they couldn't really capitalize on the name, so they didn't call it Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. They changed the name. Now, everyone hates this game for some reason. I realized that the game was basically designed and created to be very, very easy, and they wanted to kind of use it as a Western intro to JRPGs and stuff. Doesn't make it a bad game. It just makes it very easy. It's still a good game. I don't care what anyone says. Like I said, I'll die on this hill. This is a damn good game, or at least it's a serviceable, easy JRPG. A friend of mine theorized, because I always asked him, why does everyone seem to hate this game? But a friend of mine theorized that because it's designed as the tutorial, the intro to Western people for JRPGs, he theorized that they're actually just really bad at it, and that they're unable to beat the tutorial RPG, if you will, and they're just mad at it because of that. It's an interesting theory. Possibly, but I like it. I like it. Sure, like I said, it's not the most comprehensive and difficult and deep RPG. It's still a decent game, absolutely. Now, I'm going to skip one or two of these because I got some more interesting ones to talk about. Like this bad boy right here. Now, of course, naturally, I was going to bring this one up because this game, if I can not get the reflections, Secret of Mana, despite it being an absolutely beaten and battered box because, well, most of my Super Nintendo games are my original childhood games, this is my favorite game of all time. Now, many of you out there probably already know this because I never shut up about how much I love this game. But Secret of Mana is my favorite game of all time. I absolutely love it. I've played it more times than I can count. I've streamed it several times from start to finish. I want to say I've streamed it 3 separate times. And that's excluding the crappy, terrible remake that we got last year in 2018. I streamed that too, but I'm not including that. I love this game so much. I still remember the first night I ever played this game. A friend of mine was staying in my house and we went down to one of our local video stores. It was an individual one. It wasn't a chain or anything. And I had always seen this there. And because he was staying there, we got to rent stuff out. We got to rent a game to play, something to do for the night. So, I took it upon myself because, let me see, where is it? I don't know if, okay, you should possibly, no, it won't focus. So, you can't really see it there, but on one of the features of this, because I knew it looked like a kind of a JRPG / adventure game, action adventure game, whatever you want to call it, it said multiplayer capabilities. Before that, many, if not all JRPGs, for the most part at least anyway, were just big single player affairs. Of course, the recording would die while I'm talking about my favourite game of all time. But anyway, because he was staying over, we wanted something multiplayer we could play. And this was an RPG. It was a multiplayer, well, it had advertised multiplayer, so we wanted to give it a try. Still remember it, to all this day. So good. All these years later, still so good. Let's see. Really only got kind of 2 I want to quickly talk about in here, just for the sake of it. We've also got, now this isn't technically an official one, but I do have the official version of it also. You might see it here, this blue one, Secret of Mana 2, Suikoden Densetsu 3. This bad boy. Now this is an English repro. There's multiple different fan translations out there on the internet. And this one I got, it's on a European cart, plays properly on my Super Nintendo, but I mainly play it on my analog Super NT. This game was never released outside of Japan. Fantastic game. Many people would say it's arguably better than the original. I just have such love for the original that nothing can dethrone it in my mind. But it's very different. It plays kind of the same, but there's so many new mechanics. Some of them, many of them actually at that point, because the original Secret of Mana was originally being designed for the CD system for the Super Nintendo. Once that kind of died and they were released it on the cartridge, they had to cut back so many different features, so many different mechanics, so many different everything that the game almost didn't get released. But many of those mechanics that were removed from the game were brought into later Super Nintendo RPGs, like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, and the sequel, Secret of Mana 2. So, it's very different. There's 6 characters to choose from. You pick 3 of them. your whatever tree you want, and your story is based on that, and your side quests and stuff can be based on that. Now there's 3 overarching stories, so 2 characters share one story, but it's a damn fine game. Damn fine game. Some amazing graphics. Graphics are actually visually much, much better than what we have on Secret of Mana. But, well, we have to wait and see. It's rumoured that Square Enix have just registered a trademark just a few days ago here in Europe for the Collection of Mana, which could possibly be a translated or ported version or whatever of the Suikoden Densetsu collection on the Switch in Japan, which released 2 years ago. And that has Final Fantasy Legends, which is basically Suikoden Densetsu 1, or the prequel to Secret of Mana. Is it Final Fantasy Legend or Final Fantasy Adventure? Whichever. It also has Secret of Mana, and it has this in it. I've played it on my Switch. It's one of the 6 games I do own. But you get the idea. Amazing game. Emulate it if you like JRPGs and you missed that. Last up, I'll give this one a kind of a brief little mention. Whoops, I'm dropping a box. We have another entry in the Illusion of Time / Illusion of Gaia trilogy. Soul Blazer. Now, this isn't just any Soul Blazer. This is a European PAL copy of Soul Blazer with English language. Back in the day, this was only distributed in 2 countries here in Europe. And way back then, ordering stuff online or from different countries basically didn't exist. Europe, for the most part, got their own variants of this game. All over different countries, France, Germany, Austria, whatever. They all got their own versions. But despite being European versions, they only had their own localized language. This game didn't come out in the UK. This game didn't come out in Ireland. So there was no English copies readily available. However, up in, I believe it was Sweden and Norway, they got English language copies. Back then, that market, several thousand copies at best. So getting a PAL version with English language, I've opened it up, I've checked the board, it is real. This is expensive. I'm not showing it off because of that. It's just because it's a rarity, basically. It's a good game. It's still a good game. But it's more so a rarity. It's one of the last retro games I bought. Because right now, we are on the 2nd of June, 2019. 2 days after my 33rd birthday. Go me. And I haven't bought a pre-owned retro product in 6 months. That's right, 6 months. The last thing I remember buying retro products before I kind of put them on hiatus for a while was this. Now, technically, I did buy one thing after it, but it was just these plastic cases for a bunch of different consoles, a bunch of different games and stuff. I don't count those. But this is currently the last retro product I have purchased at the end of 2018. It was the start of December, I believe, end of November 2018. It's also the most expensive game I've ever bought. I'm not going to tell you how much I paid for it, but it is the most expensive game I've ever bought. Even when you compare all these weird collector's editions that are brand new, which are several €100, this is still the most expensive game I've ever bought. Off the top of my head, the next most expensive game I bought, this was about 50% more than the previous one. And I bought some weird shit, so you see my point. Anyway, that's it for our little second shelf foray. We'll take a quick look at what's in our last retro shelf, as well as our little handheld shelf. And then we'll see what comes up next. So last up on our little retro foray into the final retro shelf, if you will, we've got, well, pretty much the end of the Super Nintendo, as well as our N64. Now, there's a bunch of stuff here. Some of it is worth talking about, some of it isn't worth talking about, but we'll go through all of that now in a minute. But the big thing we have is the end of the Super Nintendo, the start of the N64, and the rest of our N64. I'm going to put the two of them into one just because it makes far more sense. Don't have a huge collection as far as N64 stuff goes, but I like to think that with the exception of maybe one specific game I bought for kind of meme reasons, I do have a fairly quality curated list. Also, just because it's in there too, we won't really worry too much about Marcus, but we do have our big box our lovely big box Super Metroid. Fun fact, I bought another big box protector as well. Turns out that Super Metroid is not the same size and shape as the rest. Oh, and I also forgot to include the last few in here too. We got Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. Now, someone's going to go, oh, Q, why is it called Hero Turtles instead of Ninja Turtles? Back in the day in Europe, they had to change the name. And we got Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3. All the Famicom variant originals, because since it's such a big, important franchise to me, I wanted them on all their original platforms. So technically, I believe I have all that now. So the last few we're talking about when it comes to the Super Nintendo. Firstly, we got Boom. That's right, everyone's favourite. Everyone knows it, everyone loves it. Super Mario RPG. Fantastic game, great RPG. Little bit easy, little bit basic, little bit more difficult than Mystic Quest Legend, I guess. But Square Enix, or Squaresoft at the time, pretty much almost entirely developed this by themselves. They used all the Mario licenses, they worked with Nintendo a bit too, in order to get this out. It uses really good quality graphics, because it uses the Killer Instinct engine, believe it or not. So it has all the stuff, the style and all, that Killer Instinct has. So, I know, kind of a strange crossover, isn't it? But it still worked out. It's a really good game. It's very, very well regarded and much, much loved by so many people at this point. But I had to import it, because back in the day, this didn't come out here. So I had to import this. This is one of the few ones I played on my little region unlock card. I can't remember if this was before or after I got the Super Nintendo itself, so I would have either played it on one or the other. But good memories regardless. Always had a problem with ROMs of this game. That's why I imported it back in the day. No matter what you did, unless you used save states, I always preferred to use the in-game saves on the ROMs, because it felt more like, a little bit more like playing it properly. But no matter what it would, it would always revert to a certain save point. Whenever you passed by it and saved it and went back, like turned the computer off or whatever, you'd boot that ROM up again, and the save file would be back to your most recent one before a specific part of the game. Never understood that. No matter what I did, no matter what ROM I did, it happened for like 10 years. It just did it and went strange. Now, I'm not going to talk much about this one, but this is a kind of a divisive game. Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. Great game, absolutely great game, has fantastic visuals and graphics, and gameplay for that matter. But it's a very divisive game. Everyone loves it, there's no question about it. But the big question on everyone's mind is it better than the original? Is it better than Super Mario World? I don't know. I don't think so. I do realize that this is, objectively speaking, a better game. But does that make it a better game? You know what I'm talking about. Let me know. There's a comment section below. You let me know what you think about it. Other than that, there's only really two more here to quickly talk about. And they're both fairly brief, like I said. We got Terranigma. Now, you US guys out there, you probably know a lot about Terranigma because you've heard all the rumors, the urban legends. The third game, I don't know the proper order of them. I believe this is number 2 in that regard. For the Illusion of Time, Illusion of Gaia series. So you have Soul Blazer, you have Illusion of Time, Illusion of Gaia, and you have Terranigma. However, Terranigma did not release in the US. It released in Japan, it released in Europe, it even released in Australia, which is technically part of Europe, at least part of European distribution, I should say, back in the day. In fact, my copy is from Australia. Because even though, like I said, I can plug it in and it works straight away, no problems, because it is a PAL region game. Still a good game if you've ever played Illusion of Time. It's very, very similar. And it's still a good game. And many Americans out there kind of lament that they never got it. I'm only going to... One minute we got on this one. You know what I'm going to do? Bang, 4 minutes in. Boom. So, let's go. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. The best Zelda game ever made and one of my favourite games of all time. There's a few others in this list that have made or a few others in the video so far that have also made my top 10 games of all time. Specifically Secret of Mana 2 and obviously Secret of Mana 1. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, the best Zelda game ever made. I will give you second place if you like Ocarina of Time. I will recognize that as a legitimate competitor for number two. If you say Breath of the Wild, Connor, you know who you are if you ever see this video. You were just wrong. That time you sent me a picture of Breath of the Wild and this, and you said, oh, one of these is the best Zelda game ever, and the other is Link to the Past. You're just wrong. You're just wrong. This is the best Zelda game ever. It's probably the most coherent in every way, shape, and form. It looks gorgeous, and it plays fantastically well. Now, we're hitting the 1 minute mark, so boom. Now we move on to the N64, and like I said, the N64 I've got a pretty small library of, but they're all fairly high quality games. That's one thing about the N64. The exclusive games that showed up on there were generally fantastic, be it first party or third party, but overall they could be pretty damn good. And one thing you'll notice, as evident by the first proper console with 4 built-in natural controller ports and no need for a multi-tap, the multiplayer focused stuff was all excellent. Now, when I showed off the stuff a minute ago, you know I had Mission Impossible on there too. That's a bit of a meme game. Everyone hates that game. It's so bad it's good to me, and I've got so fond memories of it that I had to buy it. And besides, I got it for like €7 at one point. It was damn good. But as far as quality N64 games go, need I say more? I mean, I will say more, but need I say? I wouldn't have to say more. I could show this, and you guys could 100% understand. Arguably a landmark first-person shooter game, despite being on that weird-ass controller. GoldenEye. What more is there to be said? I can just say multiplayer, and that's it. How many people out there watching this video, how many of you have so many fond memories of dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of hours of playing GoldenEye multiplayer with your friends? Probably even kicking that one guy out because he had the balls to use Oddjob. No one uses Oddjob, that's just unfair. It's just so damn good. It's so damn good. And because it's multiplayer and sticking with multiplayer, Mario Kart 64. Again, that's actually kind of a recurrent theme here now that I think about it, isn't it? When you look at all, or the majority of the games I'm going to be talking about for the N64, and hell, all the good games on the N64, it's all multiplayer memories. Just like GoldenEye. How many of you out there have dozens, hundreds, if not thousands of hours of hilarious hilarity? That's right, we're putting two of the same word together. Of fun and amazing times and all with your friends, bashing each other's with shells, red shells, whatever it is, banana peels, just because of this game. And hell, the single player was also great because the overall just base mechanics are fantastic. Now, I'm going to go a little bit off track here because usually I've been doing this in alphabetical order. My N64 games are kind of stacked in a weird way right now, so let's just go with whatever comes to hand first. Okay, I guess this is more of a triple threat deal here. We got WCW NWO Revenge, so you already know what the other two are. WrestleMania 2000 and WWF No Mercy. Now, the reason why these three games are lumped together, I'm just going to hold up No Mercy just because. The reason why these three games are lumped together is they're all developed by the same developer. Now, originally, WCW NWO Revenge came out and it blew the world of wrestling games away. It was so good. In fact, to this day, in my and many other people's opinion, and obviously it's my opinion, so you know it's good and it's right. Am I right? These three games, no matter what one you pick, you could even go and, like, WCW NWO Revenge is a little bit more basic because it was the earliest installment. You have WrestleMania 2000, which built on it. WWF No Mercy, which built on it even more. These are generally, we'll just lump the three of them together as one, generally considered the pinnacle of wrestling games ever made. You can go back to these and play them now. The mechanics are still good. The mechanics are still solid. The gameplay is still amazing. It's so damn good. And they've got great character creators too. Some of stories, WCW NWO Revenge doesn't, but WrestleMania and No Mercy do. So, how many? Again, it's the same team. How many times between these three games have you spent dozens, hundreds, thousands of hours playing four-way matches, doing all sorts of crazy stuff with friends? And how much of an amazing time and unforgettable memories will you have because of it? You see my point? Now, moving along, again, N64. It's all over the place right now, just like this entire video. Let's take a quick look. Turok 2, Seeds of Evil. There's not really much to say. One of the expansion pack games, mind you. But, well, I don't really feel like it's worth going into super detail and all about. Unlike this next one, which I absolutely do feel like talking about. Perfect Dark. Now, it's no GoldenEye, in my opinion. Someone's going to be out there, oh, Q, it's much better, it's an objectively better game, it's a technically better game. No. From a technical standpoint, it's a better game. You did need the expansion pack to play it properly. So, on a technical level, it is better in that regard. But, this came out a bit too late and was a bit too restrictive. In the sense that what you could do with the expansion pack and what you couldn't do with the expansion pack. Everyone knows and loves GoldenEye. So much more than Perfect Dark. It's still a great game, Perfect Dark. It had great multiplayer, great single player. But you cannot top the early perfect timing and everything about GoldenEye. But like I said, it's still a good game. It's still a very, very damn good game. I'm not even going to say anything about this, because what is there left to be said? Actually, you know what, I will say something. It's one of the very, very few games that made the platforming transition from 2D to 3D and survived it and did it well. And despite what anyone else is going to say, because many people disagree with me on this one, Sonic Adventure was one of the other ones that successfully did it. Your opinion be damned. Majora's Mask, I'm going to lump the two of these in together. And of course, you know what this one is. Ocarina of Time. I'll hold this one up because it's the more favourite one. Now, many people, myself included, love Ocarina of Time. Many people consider it the greatest Zelda game ever made. It's one of the few, again, it's another one of those games that did make and survive the transition to 3D properly. It's a great game, it's a fantastic game, it's a landmark game. It's still only the second best Zelda game though. Because, I mean, Link to the Past exists. I really hope this works out well. I don't know how the microphone's going, but it started lashing rain right now. I'm in, this room is in my attic, my converted attic, and when I'm chilling up here doing whatever it is I'm doing, and it starts lashing rain, you can really hear it. It's raining now, so maybe it's a little bit relaxing if you can even hear it. I'm getting off topic, but these two games, like Majora's Mask was a little bit more, just like Perfect Dark, prohibitive and restrictive. It was a much smaller game in scope, much smaller area, much smaller everything, and it required the expansion pack. I still look at myself instead of the camera. You required the expansion pack as well. Because of that, not as many people, at least that I know back in the day, were all over and about this one because of it. This obviously came out first too, which helped it, and it kind of set the world on fire and blew it all away. Fun fact as well, since we're going into stories and whatnot too, and my experience with them, both Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, and WCW NWO Revenge, I played at the same time. I was staying in a friend of mine's house at Christmas, and his brother was living in Australia at the time, and he sent him 2 games for Christmas. He sent him Ocarina of Time, and he sent him NWO or WCW NWO Revenge. Because of that, that's how I fell in love with both of those games. Or at least that's how I played them first. I'm sure I would have played them anyway. Hell, I did play them much later. But I loved wrestling games at the time. That was my easiest way to get that one done. And, well, I loved Zelda, and I would have got around to playing Zelda and all too, and that turned out to be fantastic. But that's it for... And I'm not going to talk about Super Metroid. We all know and love Super Metroid. If you haven't completed Super Metroid, I find your opinion as a gamer very hard to take seriously. But Tish, is he joking? Is he not? No, I'm not. But, yeah. We'll do one little more piece before we move on to the next one. We'll take a quick look over the handheld systems before we move on to whatever's next. So next up we got the handheld nook, the handheld cubby, the handheld shelf, the handheld whatever you want to call it. This is where I keep all my I guess, well, the majority of my superfluous, there you go, handheld stuff. Some which were bought just for collector's purposes, some I've bought and used over the years and whatnot too. But overall, in the back there, I will probably talk about some of these a little bit more because I do really enjoy some of them. A golden Legend of Zelda Triforce. Technically, it's a Minish Cap Game Boy Advance SP. That was my main Game Boy for so many years. My main Game Boy after I swapped out from my original one. I got my Circle Pad Pro for... I got Gamecube parts in it too. My Circle Pad Pro for my original launch day 3DS. Because there was no way I was playing Resident Evil Revelations without it. I got an imported Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings DS Lite. Which I kind of stuck by my original DS. I stuck by this 1980s looking guy for so many years. Then one day, believe it or not, I only was using this properly to transfer Pokemon, starter Pokemon, from one game to the other. I was like, oh my god, I saw them side by side and the screen was so much better, so I started using that one. Famicom Super Mario Bros. 1, Famicom Disk System Legend of Zelda. I checked the disc as well, it's actually still wrote as Legend of Zelda, which is pretty sweet. 2 Super Game Boys. I've got the 3 re-releases of the Nintendo 2DS, the Pokemon re-releases. The one that comes with red pre-installed, blue pre-installed, and yellow pre-installed. Also got my Fire Emblem Fates new 3DS XL, which is just really for collector's purposes. My Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate new 3DS XL. This is the one I use. This is my main current Nintendo 3DS. I upgraded from my original launch day Cosmo Black, or Cosmic Black, I think. Cosmos Black, I can see it here. And I eventually upgraded to this one. This is the one I use. I got the Pokemon Sun and Moon new 3DS XL as well. Wasn't originally going to buy this one, even for collector's purposes, but I managed to get it during an Amazon mistake, where I got it for, I think it was €160 brand new directly from Amazon. So it was a steal. It was like half price. So I was absolutely going to buy that one. We got a Cosmos Black. This is my original little launch day 3DS. You know, back when, despite what many people will completely forget, the 3DS had a terrible launch. So when that first launched, it was awful for about 8 months and it completely flopped. We know what person whose name starts with I that we can blame for that. Even if he did manage to pull it back and save it, he almost sank it straight away. And we have our Crisis Core PSP. Now I do have a regular PSP as well. I have a better PSP actually than this one. But I believe I don't have the box for my original PSP. I still have the PSP itself. But this is a Crisis Core PSP. It's got I hate to use the term Kingdom Hearts-esque artwork, because I know technically it could be just Nomura's artwork and all too, but it's a pretty cool looking PSP. It's a greyish silver one, and it has artwork for like Cloud and Zack and all on the back. Now, it came with a cool couple of extras and a fairly fancy foil copy of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. It is Japanese, it's imported from Japan, but I don't use this PSP. There's a reason why I don't use it. This is a PSP Lite. Now, I can't remember if it's a PSP 2000 or a PSP 3000, but like I used to call it, I still do actually, I like to call it a PSP, officially it's called a Slim and Light, but I call it a PSP Slim and Shite, because the screen on it is absolutely awful. In order to reduce the cost as well as the price, they cut down the quality of the LCD so much, and it's absolutely god-awful compared to the original. It's like looking at the PS Vita when they moved away from the OLED screen and replaced it with an LCD screen. It's a massive downgrade to cut costs. But anyway, you see my point. It's still kind of cool to have as well. It's a little bit expensive, but that's pretty much it. Just while we're here, I might as well go over a handful of our little collector's editions real quick. We got our Sun and Moon Steelbooks. We got our Pokken Tournament controller. We got a Wii U Pro controller, I believe. This is just some like Fallout bobblehead box I got. I have Judgment. That's much lols for many of you out there who probably know what it is. Collector's edition for Assassin's Creed 2 Brotherhood, the last Assassin's Creed game I played, and a game I attribute the reason to why I no longer like or play the series or at least any of the new ones, because Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 are great. Pandora's Tower, it's hard to look through this way. Monster Hunter 3, many people will call it Monster Hunter Try, but that's actually Irish for 3. You know, that's it. It came with one of those extra, what do they call them, the controllers, it was like a modified or redone classic controller, because, well, there was different ones for it as well. Fire Emblem Fates Collector's Edition, that was a nightmare to get, because, well, you know, trying to stock Nintendo in, try to get Nintendo stock in Ireland during the Wii U era was not a good time, even if it is a 3DS game. Majora's Mask Collector's Edition on 3DS, Last Story Collector's Edition. This one is kind of, I'll tell you a story about this one, right? The store where I got this, they had these like huge anti-theft things across. They were all around the box. They were done all around it. But they were all joined back up here. Now, I have a couple of friends who bought these as well in the same store. And every single one of our copies looked like this because of where they started wrapping it and where you could take it off. It was so annoying because I went through so much hassle to get it. The Last Story. It was one of the few good games on the Wii. One of the few good RPGs on the Wii. Along there with Xenoblade Chronicles. But I will say this. It had, even for the Wii standards, it had the worst visuals on the Wii I've ever seen. It was actually so bad on the eyes that I couldn't play much of it. I just couldn't do it. It was just really, really poor. Skyward Sword, where am I? Skyward Sword Collector's Edition. 2 reasons I bought this. 1, I knew you needed a Wii Motion Plus to play it properly. Didn't have a Wii Motion Plus, but this came with it built inside it. As well, it looks pretty sweet too. And I was going to buy Skyward Sword. Animal Crossing, where am I? It's so hard to look through without it. Animal Crossing, this one has a different name. Our one is called Let's Go to the City. I believe it's called Go to the City or City Life or City Living or something in the US. Came with a microphone that you'd sit on your TV. It was kind of cool. It worked really well, surprisingly enough. But it's Nintendo doing online stuff, am I right? Quick little fancy VHS signed by Brock and Original Ash as well. Ash gave me her cool little customized trainer card because she's cool like that. That's right, she does the voice for it. Veronica Taylor, that is. Veronica Taylor. We got Wii U. I don't know what this is. If the other one, you know what? What's the other one? That's a Pro controller. What is this? I have so much shit I don't even know what I have. Oh, that's Smash. Okay, that's Smash on Wii U. Fair enough. That's not too bad. So Smash on Wii U, not much to talk about. Super Mario Kart 8 or Mario Kart 8, fantastic game. A lot of people may or may not know what this is. Super Mario All-Stars videos came with my Super Nintendo back in the day because I got the Mario All-Stars bundle. It's pretty sweet, pretty funky. Showed you a couple of cool secrets and all, like at the start of Super Mario The Lost Levels. I know, right, guys? I'm going to break it to you. It's actually Mario 2. Dun, dun, dun. The Infinite Lives trick. And, of course, an Xbox 360 HD DVD drive. You saw my big stack of HD DVDs already. This was one of the reasons. I have a different one, which you've probably seen already too. But this one is completely unopened, brand new in box and everything as well, in case my other one dies. Managed to pick this one up for €10 when they were selling them off brand new in a place I used to work. They had 2 of them in stock. I bought one of them because I knew a friend of mine at the time, I told him that, listen, if they ever go on sale below a certain price, I'll pick you one up and I'll pick myself one up. So naturally, I'm a man of my word. So he got one, I got one. Anyway, that's it for our little retro nook. Our little first batch of collector's editions. And I guess we'll move on to whatever's next, which will be some collectibles. PS4, Gamecube, PS2, PS1. Wow, there's a big list of stuff, isn't there? Dreamcast, and a handful of Sega Saturn and random other stuff. So, next up we got the little bit more modern stuff. We'll start with a quick overview, and then we'll hit up the individual details. But overall, there's some collectibles, some PS4, some Xbox One, Gamecube, PS2, PS1. We got some more PS1, more PS2. We got some Dreamcast, and there's 1 or 2 little extras at the bottom. 2 Japanese Sega Saturn games, and a Japanese PC Engine CD game. So there's not much to go with up here on the collectible front. It's questionable stuff. We got some Halo, nothing spectacular. A couple of extra little bits of lore, some Gears of War, same deal. Various stuff, Tales of Xillia 2, some Resident Evil 6. Don't worry, I'll get to why I have Resident Evil 6 eventually. Ooh, lad, that game. Last Story, some art books, like what do we have? Pandora's Tower and the Art and Design of Gears of War. The collector's edition thing for Brotherhood. It's like a Zelda pin that came with my Breath of the Wild. Yeah. The calorie mate is kind of fun. I bought it there like a week or two ago, kind of just memeing for MGS. I wanted to try it out. Not bad. I mean, I guess I could understand if you ate it as a snack in Japan where it's relatively cheap and affordable, but imported over here is a bit much. For example, for the price of... There's 4 blocks in this. For twice the price of this, in Japan, you can get 10 of these boxes. So, yeah. But I will talk a little bit about these. I do love these. Squall will just not stay up. I do love these official triple triad cards. I had one run in Japan long time ago. Now you can't really see it. They're kind of foil embossed and all as well, but it's really hard to see on... Yeah, it's really hard to see in person, let alone on camera. I would love to have like a big collection, the whole thing, but it's just not viable. They're very, very expensive. But I did buy a few that I kind of wanted just for reasons. Irving's my boy. Squall, bleh. Renoa, Laguna, fucking hard down. Hard down. What else do we have? I went through a small phase of Pops. I know many people did. But mine, I kind of did it, I guess you could say, a little bit differently. I only bought ones from stuff that I wanted. At the time I was big into Overwatch, so we've got Reaper, Widowmaker, Tracer. Obviously Cowboy Bebop is some of the best shit ever, so we got Spike, Jet, Faye, and Ed. Again, same deal, only ones I like, so we got Mad Moxie, Altair, Ezio. By the way, Altair is the best assassin from any of those games. Cell, Ichigo, and Rukia. And of course, because at the time it was Fallout 4 season, Fallout 4 was hype, so why not get a bunch of them? Can't remember what pretty much any of them are other than various different versions of Power Armor, Brotherhood without a helmet, Dogmeat, Wasteland Wanderer maybe, and other dudes with names and all too. Because, you know, why not? It's all kind of weird. Speaking of which, the mystery box stuff, I bought a whole box of it. I think there was 12 in a minute. Bought the entire box, one of each, just open them there and then. Good stuff. So, moving on, we will move our little figures out of the way, and we'll get a proper look at our PS4 and most of our Xbox One section. So, current generation. Well, what do we have to talk about when it comes to current generation? Not too much. It feels like it's been a very lackluster generation, but I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to make it out like it's all bad. There have been some good times in there too. However, most of it isn't the best thing in the world. Like, I mean, I got stuff like Crash. It was okay. Then I bought it on PC. It was so much better because of the proper frame rate. I don't even want to talk about Destiny. Detroit, I do like Detroit. I don't care what many people say. I was very, very happy with that. Final Fantasy. Well, I've way too much Final Fantasy because it's the story of my life, isn't it? Ultimate Collector's Edition stuff. We get into proper detail of that later. More Final Fantasy, some GTA. Got it remastered nice and cheap one day. This is one I'll talk about. Gravity Rush Remastered, okay? So, Gravity Rush Remastered. Kind of had no interest in the game. I know it originally came out on PS Vita. Didn't care for it at all. Didn't appeal to me. But, I'm going to tell you a story about this copy of Gravity Rush Remastered. One day, when the BioShock Remastered Collection launched, it launched to a resounding meh. Many technical issues, art design choices, art design changes that were negatively affecting the look and feel and overall image of the gameplay, or the games in general, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna hit up Blue Point Games, who make amazing remasters of games. Now, they remastered this. They also remastered many other things along the lines of the fantastic remasters of Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 HD. Now, you might be wondering what relevance this is, because Blue Point Games had nothing to do with the BioShock remaster. But I decided, because of the, let's call it, lack of quality and apparent disregard for the changes and the original stuff, I hit up Blue Point. Went into detail about how I appreciate what they do, because so many others fail at what they try to do. But Blue Point Games does it better than anyone. Not the failing, they legitimately do the work better than anyone. Just completely random, just like that. Their customer service rep, or whoever it was I was talking to, their PR manager, whatever it was, we talked back and forth for like a couple of days anyway, and she gave me a free game. She gave me a list of, she said she'd love to try, if I tried out some of her games, blah, blah, blah. And she said, yeah, we'll, give me your name, your address, we'll send you a free game. Gave me a list of them, I picked this one. There was only a handful of them on it, not all their lists. And to be honest, all their good games, the good remasters that they do, I already had. Because they're great games and they're great remasters. So, this arrived about a week later. And they even sent me a little bit note in there as well. Enjoy your gift from Blue Point. So I kept this. This means a lot to me. It's a small little gesture for them, but it means a lot to someone like me. You know me, I'm a sentimental guy. I won't say I cherish this. I won't say I treasure it, but in the modern gaming world that we live in, and, well, we all know what it is, I truly do appreciate it. I mean, most people say, oh, I appreciate this, that, and the other, but I really, really do. I really do appreciate that. And just so good from Ivor. Like I said, I really, really appreciate it. What else we got? Nothing important. Failure. Fucking failure. Hate it. Actually, good content. Failure. Hate it. Some of the worst games I've ever played in a long time. So we got Naruto. That's Naruto as well. Persona. Platinum both of these games. Persona 5. Of course, I'm going to talk about Persona 5. This game here is a masterpiece. And I don't use that term lightly. This game is a true masterpiece. It's one of the finest games I've ever played. I love JRPGs. My favorite genre ever. Most people would usually say, oh, you have your old ones, the same ones that everyone else and all. I mean, yeah, I guess you could say that. But I played this game. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved this game. This game was so good. It got my 2017 Game of the Year, and it automatically shot itself up into my top 10 games of all time. And that's a list populated by Super Nintendo games, PS1 games, Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy VI. So you see my point. This is up there. This is one of the greatest games ever. Over 100 hours of absolutely amazing content. And I love it. I love it. This I do not love. Despite it being technically my favorite game ever, it's still fully sealed, as you can tell. I played the PC version. I hate this remake. It's so bad. So bad. But you know what remake is so amazing? That's not the one. This remake is absolutely amazing. This is the best game I played in 2018. Shadow of the Colossus. Who remade this? Not just remastered it, but who remade this game? Well, who do you think? Blue Point Games. Those amazing masters of what they do. Shenmue 1 and 2, naturally, even though I was playing it on PC, of course I had to own every version of it. So yes, I did buy a PS4 copy. Because why wouldn't I? What else we got? Ooh, Heavy Rain, they're coming to, they're all just like Detroit. Coming to Epic, and eventually Steam. Let's see, what else? Last of Us Remastered. Probably next to Persona 5, the PS4 game I've played the most of. Because it's just a damn good game. It's going to be a shame when the next one comes out on PS4 and it's going to be 30 frames per second. It will be nice though when they remastered on PS5 and has 60 frames per second. But that's basically it on the PS4 side of it. Great game, everyone should play it. Brilliant game. Let's look at Xbox One. We do have a little bit more of Xbox One a little bit later. But it really just goes to show. Launch game, Dead Frame Rate 3. Dead Frame Rate 4. So bad. So bad. To the point where I now no longer will automatically buy a new entry in the series. Dead Rising 4 has me on like opposite of Dead Rising series now. It's just loved 1, loved 2, 3 was okay, 4 was so bad. Gears 4 came with my collector's edition. Gears 4 Ultimate Edition, bought it. And Halo 5, which I'm sure will be eventually ported to PC. And I will play it on there then. So, that's really it. Let's move on down. We'll do the same with our Gamecube games. Now, it's Gamecube game time. And luckily, it's in a much better position, so I don't need to keep getting up and back down. Up and back down. So we can take a nice, comfortable little look at everything we got here. So what do we have Gamecube-wise? I have a decent Gamecube collection. I'm missing a few other things, but let's take a quick look at it anyway. Animal Crossing, our first one. You may be wondering, Q, why are some of these boxes very different? Well, these are European boxes. These ones are American boxes. So, that's why everything doesn't line up properly. Now, Animal Crossing. I will talk about Animal Crossing for one specific reason. The main reason Can I get this out? The main reason I want to talk about Animal Crossing is this is the first GameCube game I imported. The first one. Came with its own memory card because it used an entire memory card to save. What do we have? 58 to 61 blocks. Came with a 59 block memory card. 61 blocks. Or up to 61. Yeah, so you see why it came with it. Now, Animal Crossing is a series I love. This looks really good. I can't wait. Don't fall. For the latest one that comes out on Switch. I can't wait for that, believe it or not. But this was my first imported GameCube game. I only have 3 of them, as far as I can remember. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I have 3 European ones and 2 Japanese ones. But this was a big deal. Because it took absolutely forever. Literally years, if I remember correctly, to be ported over. That's so good. Because of that, it reminds me of why I had to get... Where am I? This bad boy. My freeloader. This allows me to play imported games on my GameCube. Now, it doesn't work anymore. Well, it technically does, but my GameCube disk drive is very, very finicky at this point. And this is the first generation one, so it doesn't work in the Wii. You need to get the later one if you want to work it in a Wii. But I can't do that, unfortunately. Now, what else do we have? There's so many other games here that many people will talk about. I mean, someone will obviously go crazy about Eternal Darkness. Some will go crazy about Fire Emblem. Don't get me wrong, Fire Emblem's a great game. But I will mention, just for a second, we have Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. There is an effect in Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. The first time you break through the miasma stream near the start of that game, and then subsequently every time, that kind of blew my mind. When I saw that, I was playing on my, what at the time was a 1080i plasma TV, and I was watching it, and the graphics, as it just kind of did the effect and blew through it, it blew my mind. It looked so good. It was just so damn good. Now, I will mention this just for a second as well. Baldur's Gate, Dark Alliance. The Dark Alliance 1 and 2 are great games. They're on pretty much every platform, or 3 of the 4 platforms of that generation. Multiplayer Baldur's Gate goodness. The reason why I'm going to talk about it for a second is I have so many great memories of me and my friends hanging out, playing them across all the different platforms. One of us had it on the PS2, one of us had it on the Xbox, one of us had it on the GameCube. So we had so many different reasons and so many different ways to go through it. And so many different hours. Dozens, if not hundreds of hours. It's just so amazing. Same with the second one. First one was better. from what I remember, or my memories of the first one are better. But that's pretty much it as we go. Harvest Moon Game Boy adapter, of course, because that's a nightmare to actually get. Now, I'll mention this just for a second. Mario Kart Double Dash, okay? Arguably the weakest Mario Kart game, in my opinion. It's tied for weakest Mario Kart game with the Game Boy Advance one. I can't, no matter what, when you play Mario Kart Double Dash, no matter what difficulty you play it on, or what visual settings or whatever, frame rate, it just feels so slow. That's all I can say about it. See what else we got going through. We got some Metal Gear Solid, Twin Snakes. It's actually signed by, you know what, I'll show it off. It's signed by David Hayter. I got it done in person, so I know it's legit. We got some Metroid. I'm always waiting to see if we get the new one. If we get the Metroid HD collection that everyone says we're going to get. But I have my doubts anyway. Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2. I have so ridiculous many, like literally hundreds, if not thousands of hours in this game. Most of it, a considerable amount of it at least, the majority of it, spent on dial-up. That's right, dial-up internet, trying to do that. That's not a fun time for you guys out there, but there was some of it on broadband too, but that's just one game. I never got to play it on the Dreamcast properly. One of my friends did, but then, when it came out on Phantasy Star, on the Gamecube, it was just, that was my jam for a while. It's what I consider my first proper MMO, and woo lad. We'll move on to our, there's not so much to say about the Resident Evil stuff. Resident Evil 0 was obviously a new exclusive game. Resident Evil was a remake. It was a proper exclusive one on it too. Resident Evil 2 and 3 are just ports, enhanced ports of course. And Resident Evil 4 obviously changed the genre and changed the series for, well, most people would say for the better. So I'll go with for the better. But it's great stuff. It's great stuff. The Resident Evil games, they're fantastic. It's such a great, amazing series, except for Resident Evil 6, the current worst game I've ever played. But yeah. Here's another one I talked about recently as well. Skies of Arcadia Legends. I mentioned it recently in another podcast episode where the director said she considers this the definitive and like ultimate cut of the game. So there's probably no need to make a sequel, a newer cut, or a HD port or anything, which is kind of a shame because it's a great JRPG, but many people might have not experienced it because, well, you have to play it on the Gamecube or you have to play it on the Dreamcast. So it's a little bit of a shame in that regard. What else we got? Smash Bros, Super Mario Sunshine, Tales of Symphonia, probably the best Tales of game, or certainly up there as one of the top three. Wind Waker, and kind of an overrated, no, not an overrated, kind of an underrated game. A lot of people seem to hate it because of the art style, but it's a great game, mind you. Twilight Princess, Beautiful Joe, and we got two little Japanese games here, and on these we have our first Bleach Fighter. I believe there's multiple different ones, but we got the first one, and we got our Naruto something 4. It's probably like Ultimate Ninja Storm 4 or something 4. If I remember right, it only goes up to where the main story ends in original Naruto, so it's like 120, maybe 130 or 40 in around there, based on the character roster we have here. We do have we got Naruto, we got Sasuke, we got Sakura, Rock Lee, Neji, Tenten, Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, Kiba. Oh no, I'm forgetting his name. I don't need to go through everyone anyway, but you get the idea. They're great fighting games. That the Naruto one is kind of a 4-way brawler, I think almost Smash Bros, whereas this one is a one-on-one fighter. We'll get back in, and that's pretty much it for our GameCube. We'll move on down and see what we have next in the form of the majority of the PS2 section and the majority of our PS1 section. So it's PS1 and PS2 time. Now I'm going to give you a fair little bit of a warning here. This is probably where the talking is going to get a bit longer. The nostalgic memories, the sentimentality, the walk down memory lane, it's probably going to get bigger pangs here for this little bit. But anyway, the majority of the PS1 and PS2. We do have some more as well, but we'll get to them in a moment. We'll start with the PS2. Oh, you know what? Just to keep it fair, okay? This shelf is not buckling because of this weight. There's not too much weight in this. There used to be something on this. It was completely packed with books and folders. There used to be this huge series that I used to have when I was much, much younger that I eventually transferred onto here for a while. It was called Bugs, B-U-G-S, and they had these 4 hugely thick folders. They were in the middle, they weighed an absolute ton, and they pretty much bulked everything up. But now, let's take a quick look through the PS2 section. We'll start with, we don't start with anything major. Some Ark, some Atelier, some terrible Breath of Fire game, unlike the rest of them. Dark Chronicle, that's a bit more important for many people, but Dark Cloud being the bigger one. DMC, good old Devil May Cry. Oh, I'm taking everything out. Good old Devil May Cry. The game that started the Fantastic series. I kind of fell out of it myself. Fell out of it during the second game. Still have the first one, of course. Maybe I'll get around to the new one. Now, here's another one. Not Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit, that's Indigo Prophecy for you guys out there in America. This game is a bit of a meme to some people. Even some people I know in real life. Now, to me, this is a launch game. One of my friends had a PS2 at launch. This was his only game. It's actually a really good game. The controls are great once you get used to them. The visuals are still really good if you play with a component cable. For a launch PS2 game, that is. The visuals are great for a launch PS2 game. I love John Carpenter's The Thing. And that's almost what this is. This is basically John Carpenter's The Thing. It's great. I highly recommend everyone pick it up. If you're a fan of PS2 era games, I highly recommend you pick it up. What else we got? Fahrenheit, Fallout, oh god. Final Fantasy X. It wouldn't be right if I didn't take this out and talk about it. Oh yeah, it's signed by Riku. She the best. She the best. This game. Anyone out there who started Final Fantasy games before this, like me, you're European, you started with Final Fantasy VII. You know what it's like to go from Final Fantasy VII to 8 to 10. Well, 8 to 9 to 10. I don't know why I skipped 9 in there. You go through all of that. And the difference that the PS2 made from moving from Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 to 10 was huge. Felt like such a big deal, such a big jump. Now, unfortunately, going from the PS2 to the PS3 didn't have that effect. But back with the PS2, some people give this game a lot of crap. I love this game. This obviously isn't my original copy because I got it at launch and this is a platinum version. But this game, 100%. This is my PS2 memory card, 100%. My PS2 memory card is actually in this box. I keep it in here for nostalgic purposes. See? It's specifically in there for that reason. 100%. All the Dark Aeons, Penance, everything. All the Ultimate Weapons, 100%. Took me like 160, 180 hours, something like that, in that save file. But that is all that mattered. 10-2, we won't talk too much about. 12, not a huge fan of it. It's not a bad game, it's just a decent game. Some people say it's the best one, but I wouldn't go too far. Grandia 2, great JRPG, highly recommend it, especially with the HD remaster on PC. Grandia 3, I have actually never played. This is an imported one, and I'll get around to it eventually. My, my old PS2 that I used to play modded stuff on back in the day is long gone. So, technically I could install it on PC and all and whatnot, but it wouldn't be fair if I didn't mention these 3 games in detail. Because, I mean, technically there's nothing I need to say. I can point to these 3 games, this series, this trilogy. You already know everything about it. It revolutionized the open world exploration game. Not in the same way Shenmue did. Shenmue revolutionized it, the open world game, the open world genre, for games like RPGs, Final Fantasy X, etc., etc. This did it differently. It's a legacy that still lasts to this day, and that's completely evident by the love for these three games that everyone has, as well as GTA 4, and of course, the sales numbers of GTA 5. It says it all, really. Fun fact, about 2 years ago or so, I was taking stuff down from this room. I was giving it a good clean, a good thorough painting, etc. And my cousin stopped by, he was in his early teens at the time. I think he's about 18 now or so, maybe a little bit under, but he was in his early teens. And he thought GTA 3, that's right, the number 3, yes, I can say it properly, I just don't. It's not natural to me. But he thought this was the first game, just because of his age. I had to show him GTA 1 and 2. I know, it's just kind of crazy when you think about it. I'm not going to talk about the Half-Life, because, well, it's Half-Life on the PS2. It's like vertical squish, although I would like to play Decay. Eco, it kind of stands out because of the difference of the box, but whatever. Killzone, Kingdom Hearts 2, Legaia 2, Dual Saga, very underrated RPG if you ask me. I can't pronounce Manachemia. Oh yes, Alchemist. MGS2 Substance, MGS2 Sons of Liberty, MGS3 Snake Eater, MGS3 Subsistence. It's so hard for me to talk about these games, especially MGS2, because I feel like I can't properly verbalize and get my point across just how much this means. These games. Like I said, 3 as well, specifically 2. Such an early influence on the PS2. I got my PS2 with Zone of the Enders after playing the MGS2 demo included with Zone of the Enders. I bought it more so for the demo than the game. Now, luckily, Zone of the Enders turned out to be a great game, but that's just how good it was. MGS2, like the back of my hand, every way, all day, every day. Every dog tag, everything. It was the kind of game where I would sit down and think, okay, I have 2 hours to kill, I'm bored, what am I going to do? Oh, I'll just put on MGS2, skip all the cutscenes, complete the game on hardest difficulty without getting hit. That's right. That's the kind of level I was at with how much I played these games. It's insanity. I love them so much. So much. Back when Kojima was something. Unfortunately, it's not the case now. Monster Hunter, the origin of the amazing series that was not saved by Nintendo. I just want to reiterate that for everyone. Ukami, a game I didn't get to play properly until recently when the HD remaster launched. And yeah, I didn't actually like it. Onimusha 2, 3, Dawn of Dreams, and Warlords. You might be wondering why Warlords is there. Well, I am an extreme stickler when it comes to putting stuff in alphabetical order, and numbers come before letters. So 2, 3, D, W. So as much as that kills me in other ways, that way it kills me a little bit less. Persona 4, I'm going to mention this even if it's not the specific version of the game. Persona 4. The reason why I say not the most specific version of the game, because obviously this is still sealed. Persona 4. Why was I holding? I could just hold it here the whole time. That would have been much better. By the way, no, it's not a Square Enix game. It's just distributed in Europe by Square Enix. Now, Persona 4. When I say Persona 4, I'm mostly talking Persona 4 Golden, because that's the proper version I experienced with it on 2. But just like Persona 5, the Persona series is so good, so amazing, and so high quality that when I played Persona 4 Golden, it instantly jumped to one of my top 10 greatest games of all time. Joining games, like all those Super Nintendo games, a couple of PS1 games, and I guess now Persona 5 is in there too. But I'll give you a little bit of a story with it as well. When Persona 4 came out, the Xbox 360 was already around for a few years at that point. And I had seen the front cover of this in my local GameStop. And I had wanted it so badly. I really wanted it, but At that point, it was so hard to justify paying not only full price, because full price was about 50 to 60 euro, but this was about 80 euro for the single copy, brand new copy, the single copy they had in my GameStop. And at the time when you could buy a 360 game or a PS3 game for less than that, it was a tough sell. I turned out I never got it, but when it was announced to come to Vita, I bought a Vita specifically for that, and I am thankful I did, because it's almost a masterpiece. It's just so ridiculously good, and I love it so much. I won't say it started my proper love affair with Persona, because technically I did play Persona 3 first. I just didn't finish it back in the day, because I played the PS3 version, or the PSP version, and I got a good bit into it, and I can't remember why I phased out. But then when it came to Vita, for that, I was right back in and completely invested. Of course, at this point now, I finished Persona 4 Golden, Persona 3 FES, Persona 5. I'm going to go play Persona 5 The Royal when that comes out. You get my point. Project Zero 3, Red Faction, Resident Evil 4. Obviously, it's the crappy, inferior version, but, well, it's nice to have as a collectible. We'll take a break for a second from the PS2 games, because we are done with the ones on this shelf. And we'll continue on with a little bit down here. Like I said, the talking does increase because so many memories with all this stuff. Ape Escape, good game. It's also the very first game that ever actually fully required a DualShock controller. Not just an analog, but an actual DualShock. Breath of Fire 3 and 4. These are absolutely amazing JRPGs. Now, it's a shame that Capcom doesn't make high quality JRPGs in the Breath of Fire series anymore. Mainly because they do have a... what's it called? They have a mobile game out now. I believe it's Breath of Fire 6, Breath of Fire 5, the proper 5. I can't remember, but it's a mobile game in Japan. And, well, Dragon Quarter was absolute fucking trash. But Breath of Fire 3 is one of the high... The PS1 has so many extremely high quality JRPGs on it. To the point where not just me, but many people out there consider it one of the greatest generations of gaming, especially when it came to JRPGs. Breath of Fire 3 played a large role in that saga. And I can't help but agree in every way. Breath of Fire 4, on the other hand, I feel is extremely underrated. It's a very good game in its own right. It's not as good as Breath of Fire 3, but that is by no means saying it's bad. It's still a fantastic game and an extremely high quality JRPG. It's very different thematically. It's more so like Middle East Eastern versus, well, I don't know what you call this based on, but it's still an extremely high quality game that I absolutely recommend. Chrono Cross. Now, I got this for free, hence why it's a greatest hits version. If I had bought it, it wouldn't be a greatest hits version, but I got it for free. Never fully got a chance to play it. Back in the day when I was trying to emulate it on ISOs and whatnot, it was not the easiest thing to do. I'm sure I can go back and do it eventually. Let's see what else we get. Someone's going to give me a lot of flack for this, but Dino Crisis does not hold up to this day. I used to love it back in the day. Went to try it again about 2 years ago. Does not hold up to me. Doom, what more can I say about Doom? It's Doom. You're probably wondering what goes in here. It is Final Fantasy Anthology, which is Final Fantasy 4 and 5. I'm currently playing Final Fantasy 4 on my PS2 downstairs connected to my FrameMeister, so that's why that's missing. Because I know I took the picture of it on all of the video for the Super NT on the Super Nintendo version, but then the battery issue died and all. Final Fantasy Origins, Final Fantasy, well, it's 1 and 2. The very first time we ever got them in Europe, because they never came out here back in the day. Final Fantasy 6. Funny enough, if I remember correctly, the order was 7, 8, 9, 6, Anthology, and then 1. If I remember correctly. Because these didn't come out until much, much later. Because Final Fantasy 6 actually came with a PS2 demo for Final Fantasy 10. Yeah, there's Final Fantasy 10. So you can see how much later, but I mean, it just wouldn't be fair if I didn't mention Final Fantasy as a series, the older ones. Final Fantasy 1 is a great game. It's the birth of the legendary series. Final Fantasy 2, I feel, gets a lot of shtick, mainly because people latch on to the negative meme. When you think about it, in Final Fantasy 2, your main way of leveling up your skills and you're leveling up your abilities and all that stuff If you want to level up sword and attack and whatnot, you attack with a sword. You take damage if you want to level up your defense and your hit points. But everyone latches onto the meme where you have to beat yourself up and kill yourself and whatnot to do that. No, if you play it properly, it's like Skyrim in that regard. You use the skill more, it levels up. It's not a perfect comparison, but I feel like the game gets unjustifiably judged because of it. Final Fantasy VI, one of the greatest games of all time, one of the games on my list. Final Fantasy VII, I mean, Final Fantasy VII revolutionized so much for JRPGs in the West in general. It gets a bit of a stick sometimes, mainly because, oh, it's Final Fantasy VII, 6 was better, 4 was better and all. I don't care what anyone says. If you're European, this was our first Final Fantasy game. So, you came to the PS1, and you came to this. It's just one of those games that I can't properly, adequately display what it means to someone like me, or just so many other people all over the world, here in Europe, US, Japan, whatever it is. This game changed the world, despite what some people will say out there. And I'm thankful it did. I'm thankful I got to experience that too. 3 discs of amazing gameplay that still holds up extremely well to this day. Final Fantasy VIII, not so much. I'm not a fan. It's one of my least favourite Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy IX was really good. Almost 100%ed it. I 100%ed it without the speedrun stuff, because obviously I didn't know that at the time. Beat Ozma, did all the Chocobo maps, all that stuff too. What else we got from Mission? Grand Theft Auto. I mean, I can say the same thing about GTA as I can about GTA 3. What more needs to be said? It's in the same sentence, basically. Grandia is a great, high-quality JRPG. I really recommend it. There is a HD remaster coming out on the PC sometime soon. It's also coming to Nintendo Switch. I highly recommend you play it. It's a very, very great game. What else do we have? Jade Cocoon, it's a decent RPG. Legend of Cartia, it's a card-based, kind of almost Final Fantasy Tactics style game. Maybe check that out if it's the kind of thing you're into. Medieval, it's a great game. It's getting a remake later this year in October. Can't wait. Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid Special Missions. Oh yes, it's signed by David Hayter as well. Again, back when we had Kojima and he could make great games. Again, this is one of those games, like GTA, like Final Fantasy VII, that just completely changed what gaming was on the PS1. It was one of the highlights of what you could do on the PS1 that you couldn't do with a cartridge-based system or on a 16-bit console. I can't count the amount of time I've put into this. The amount of times I've replayed it. I'm sure all of you are exactly the same as me. What else have we got? This game does not hold up. Feel free to hate me for saying that. I tried to play it around the same time I played Dino Crisis. Does not hold up, unfortunately. These 3 games, I'm going to lump them all together. What can I say? Genre within itself, arguably almost one of the creepiest games of all time because of what you could finally do with the PlayStation. Even if it's the basic version, not the director's cut. This is the good one, by the way. It doesn't have that crappy soundtrack. What you could do in Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2, with the 3D graphics, the sound effects, the CD quality music, the fixed camera angles. I don't care what anyone says, tank controls are fantastic. These games, or at least this and this, maybe not so much this, but these 2, masterpieces within their own right. I mean, this just got a remake, lives on in its infamy, or, well, I guess I wouldn't say infamy, that's not really fair. This already got a remake, and so many re-releases and whatnot too. They're so well loved. We'll probably see a remake of this bad boy within the next few years. But that's it for part 1 of the PS1/PS2. We'll move on and see what's next with some more PS1, PS2, Dreamcast, and a little bit extra, a little bit of a secret. So we move on to the conclusion of our PS1 and most of our PS2 games, as well as hit up one or two new systems because, well, it's got to be a little bit different. Before we do though, we'll take a quick little look at some random stuff, some randomness. We got, a lot of people always completely forget this even exists. This is a PS3 memory card adapter. It connects through USB, you put your PS1 or PS2 memory card into it, and it connects to your PS3. And you can transfer your save files onto some of the digital software memory cards that are on there, so you can play them. See, the original idea was because the PS3 had backwards compatibility with PS1 and 2, you could use your memory cards and your save files. Now, you can use it to back them up and just keep them on there and then eventually transfer them onto a different memory card if needed. But, unless you use, say, the PS1 emulator inside it, it's pretty much useless other than that. Next up is, well, it's just a bunch of PS2 memory cards. They're all official except the last one, which is actually a PS1 memory card. But, yeah, it's good stuff. They're kind of all extra additional superfluous ones, because my main one that I use everything, I picked all them up at one point, all those memory cards. My main one is back in Final Fantasy X. That's my real deal one. And here's one that pretty much everyone is going to forget even exists. You might be wondering what this is. Well, this is an Xbox 360 memory unit. It's essentially a small, I believe it's 64 MB memory card for the 360 back when that first launched. That was fun in a bun, wasn't it? Good job, Q. Good job. Well, they're out of the way. That's all that matters. So, let's continue on with our PS1 anyway. We have some good stuff. We've got, well, I said we got some good stuff, and then we open up with Resident Evil Survivor. I'm not going to talk about it, but we do have Ridge Racer, because, you know, memes. But here's one I do want to talk about. Silent Hill. Now, I'm going to go straight off the bat here, and I'm going to give a little bit of a controversial opinion. A lot of people will always compare Silent Hill and Resident Evil, and they say, oh, one is big, one is better than the other, and this, that, and what. I consider them two completely different genres. If you ask me, this is a psychological horror game. Whereas Resident Evil, while it has a lot of psychological elements in it, because of, say, the camera angles, the fixed camera angles, the sound design, the sound effects, the music, the score, etc., it's a survival horror game. Very, very different, if you ask me, compared to Silent Hill. And this game is fantastic. Now, I don't want to do it a disservice by saying it's not as good as Silent Hill 2, because, I mean, while technically that is true and it's not as good as Silent Hill 2, it's still an amazing game, and I can't properly get that across, so I don't want to do it a disservice. But moving along anyway, I've already talked about this fairly recently. Legend of Dragoon, one of the better JRPGs, first-party Sony game, nothing to do with Square Enix or Squaresoft even at the time, despite, I don't know why many people think it's a Squaresoft game, but it's an amazing game, fantastic JRPG, one of the best on the platform, because, well, that's saying something, because there are so many amazingly high-quality PS1 JRPGs. But at the same time, I really do hope we get a correctly done, properly done, that maintains the spirit, play, gameplay, etc. of the game. Possibly remake on the PS5. That would absolutely love me. What else? We got some Tomb Raider. That's kind of where my trilogy fell off. I love Tomb Raider 1, I love Tomb Raider 2. Tomb Raider 3 was good, but everything after that kind of just fell apart. I do want... No, not Vagrant Story. A lot of people like Vagrant Story. It's an okay game. It's very reminiscent of Parasite Eve, if you ask me. Many people go nuts for it because it's set in Ivalice, which is basically Final Fantasy XII and Final Fantasy Tactics. But it's nothing special in my opinion. However, something that is special is this game. That's right, made by Konami of all things. Now, Vandal Hearts is, think Fire Emblem. It's a Fire Emblem-esque tactical grid-based game. It's got all different classes, magic, weapons, abilities, yada yada yada. I'm not going to go into super detail about it. But this is actually my personal favorite PS1 game of all time. I mean, I could talk about Legend of Dragoon, I could talk about Breath of Fire 3, I could talk about Final Fantasy 7 and what they did and how monumental and influential they were. But this is my personal favorite game. And don't get me wrong, I do think Final Fantasy 7 is a better game, but this is my favorite game, if that makes sense. Now, if you're interested about this, I do have an entire 100% completion run on the channel. There's a playlist for that, so do feel free to check it out. Now, if I can get back in here. Oh, no, we're not having problems. Wild Arms, again, another perfect example of high quality PS1 RPGs. Xenogears, I had to import this, never finished it because once I actually got the disc-based versions, my old chipped PS1 was long gone, and the ROMs and ISOs never properly worked once you hit disc 2, but thankfully that was so long ago I completely forgot everything. Now, that's PS1 done. As far as I know, we're completely done on PS1. So we'll move to some Japanese Sega Saturn. Not much to talk about in this regard. It's Grandia. I love Grandia. I love it as a series, or at least the first 2 games. And most people think it's a PS1 game because of, well, their first experience with it was PS1. But Grandia is actually a Sega Saturn game originally. And it's fantastic. Obviously, I played the PS1 version. I will be playing the remastered one. But I felt like this is something I wanted to own because of how much I loved it and how good everything was. So it is something I wanted to own. Now I have to try to get this back in. I don't want to rip the cardboard. So no, I'm going to have to be careful with that. I'll put it all back in at once. I'm going to skip this one. I know what it is. I'm going to skip it. I'm going to leave it till last in that regard. But we do have some of the origins, in essence, in a sense at least, of Persona. Now we all know Persona is a spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei series. This is Shin Megami Tensei 1. This is the original Shin Megami Tensei. It's not Persona 1, it's Shin Megami Tensei 1. It's the Japanese PC Engine CD version. I did kind of get a little bit burned on this. It's in fairly good condition except for one part, and I guess it's my own problem. When I bought this, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, I should have realized why the guy selling it wasn't expensive, so I wasn't too burned by it. But the guy selling it, he was posting all the pictures online and all. I should have realized why he didn't post a picture of the back of it, but he did on like everything else. Because there's a crack in it. There is a crack in it. Now, it's not. I mean, depending on what way you want to look at it, you could say it's a hugely bad crack or whatever. I mean, it's kind of mid-tier if you ask me. But I'm not super burned about it or anything like that. But I do want to leave this one. Hopefully you still can't. Oh, well, there's a name on the top. We got the Police Knots. Now, many people are going, oh, Q, you hate Kojima. What do you, blah, blah, why do you have this? Come on, people, listen, pay attention to what I say about Kojima and my logical analysis of the stuff. I mean, this is different. This is different. But we have the black box, it has a really weird official title because there's a bunch of different versions of this game. If I remember correctly, this is like the Kojima Black Box Special Edition or the Kojima Black Label Special Edition or Private Collection Special Edition. It's so weird kind of get these names. But this proves something because Kojima has previously said that... Oh, well, first off, before I go any further, myself, like many other people outside of Japan, their first foray or their first anything with Police Knots was MGS1 because of the references and all that in it too. But Kojima has said in the past that his body and mind are made up of, I think he said 95% movies and 5% original ideas and games. If you look at pretty much everything he's made, that is extremely apparent. This one being a complete rip-off of, look at the cover, who does that look like? Mel Gibson maybe? Oh look, it's Lethal Weapon. So, yeah, you can see. Now, the artwork in it is great, and funny enough, she's not on the back of the box, but Meryl from Metal Gear Solid actually started in this. Think about that. That's kind of weird in that way, isn't it? And fun fact as well, just for those of you out there who are into that kind of thing, if you do a bunch of secret stuff and beat some high scores and stuff, you can feel her up. You can like grab her tits and all that too, and that's, vintage Kojima, I guess, because, well, why wouldn't it be? Now, we will move on to some PS2. We have. I hope I wasn't blocking the microphone that whole time. But we'll move on to some PS2. We got some important stuff here, some not important stuff. Code Veronica X. I'm not going to talk about the X version of the game. We'll leave that to the Dreamcast. Dead Aim, Outbreak, Outbreak File 2. Outbreak actually had online play removed from the European version, so it's extremely difficult to play because the entire game is balanced around having real people using real everything and real logic, but you have to kind of rely on AI, and it's terrible in that regard. File 2, multiplayer was left in it. Ring of Red. This is a game I feel that not many people know about or not many people talk about. This feels like almost a precursor to Valkyria Chronicles. Now, it's not made by the same company or anything. It's made by Konami. The other is made by Sega. But the gameplay is very reminiscent of each other. This is like a World War II based tactical turn-based grid game or something, whatever way you want to call it. All your units and all are big mechs. They all have different powers, different special abilities, different attacks and all too. And you can supplement them by having like rear guard and vanguard infantry units with you. And they can all have different abilities that you can have to counteract their weaknesses or to combat enemy strengths or whatever it is to augment your abilities. It's actually a really good game. If you like stuff like Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics, I highly recommend this game. And I feel like no one gives it enough love, and probably no one knows too much about it. But anyway, Rogue Galaxy, I never got around to playing it. I bought it with the intention of it. But I will talk about these two. I will talk about these two games. Where are we? I want to get the two of them together. So, Shadow Hearts and Shadow Hearts Covenant. These are absolutely fantastic PS2 JRPGs. Well, do they count as JRPGs? They're made by Midway. Or it's kind of ambiguous when you look at who they're made by and developed by and published by. But well, let's just call them PS2 RPGs just for the sake of it. These are amazing quality games. They're absolutely fantastic. They're some of the highest quality stuff on there. And that's said in the same sentence as a console that has things like Final Fantasy X on it. So these are definitely some of them out. Don't sleep on these if you haven't heard of them and you're into PS2 RPGs. These are some of the best ones out there. Unfortunately, that doesn't transfer over to the third game in this series. Where are we? Shadow Hearts Covenant. Shadow Hearts from the New World. This one was nowhere near as good. In fact, this is the only one I didn't finish. I 100%ed the other two, but this one I just did not enjoy. And I kind of stopped playing it after a while, which is a bit of a shame. Hopefully, eventually, maybe they bring back the series and they do something good. Shadow of the Colossus. I don't really have much to say about that, mainly because I talked about the remake on the PS4 so much. We got Digital Devil Saga, some Shin Megami Tensei different series, and 1 and 2. These are actually fully sealed because I have them digitally on the PS3. But I will talk about this bad boy. Persona 3 FES. Now this is an American copy. Again, I have a digital copy for the PS3. But this I did have this originally sealed. But I opened it in order to get it signed by two of the characters. I have Yukari and Mitsuru Senpai. They've signed it for me. But yeah, it's Persona 3 FES. We all know how great it is. It's one of the best, again, RPGs on the console. You're looking at games like Final Fantasy X. You're looking at games like Persona 3 and 4. You're looking at games like Shadow Hearts and Shadow Hearts Covenant. Some of the best RPGs on there for sure. And I'm sure, I mean, at this point, I don't even need to talk too much about just how great they are. What else do we have in there too? Star Ocean, it's an okay one on the PS2 if I remember correctly. We got SSX Tricky, Silent Scope, Silent Hill 3, and I do, of course, want to mention Silent Hill 2. Again, another one that's considered an absolute masterpiece. It's absolutely, definitely, what do they call it? A psychological horror masterpiece. Absolutely, in pretty much every possible way. Now, the great thing about it is I have a story with this game that I'm going to share with you guys right here, right now. I think I might have told it before, but even if I didn't, I'm going to tell it again. Or even if I did, I'm going to tell it again. I was originally getting this game for Christmas. Now, whatever year it came out and all, I was picking out 4 or 5 games. I was allowed to pick out 4 or 5 games for Christmas that I wanted because my mother didn't know anything about games. She didn't really know what I'd like and she didn't want to risk buying stuff I wouldn't like. So she goes, okay, I would, out of all of your Christmas presents, you can pick 5 games among the rest of the stuff. So I'm like, okay, I picked 5 games. This was one of them. And I even got the special edition for it. Now, this isn't the original special edition I had. I had to rebuy this later. But this was the one I got. Now, here's the great thing about it. I remembered how good Silent Hill 1 was. So I snuck in, and I got Silent Hill 2. And in the middle of the night, I started playing it. And, of course, the game scared the shit out of me because, well, it's Silent Hill 2 and it's a psychological masterpiece. Especially when you're a young kid. Or, I think I was in my early teens at the time. But, well, let me see. When did that come out? Yes, it would have. I would have been in my early to mid-teens. But it blew my mind. It scared the shit out of me. It was a great game overall. But I love this game so much that I did something that I don't usually do, even back then. And I don't think I've done to this day. I watched the included bonus DVD of stuff, including all the behind-the-scenes footage. Talks with the director, talks with the character designers, the story writers, talked with the development team. I still remember it to this day because it, like I said, it's probably the last one I can definitely recall doing it for, and I'm pretty sure it's the last one I actually did it for. But on top of that, I still remember a lot of the stuff in it. I remember a lot of the stuff that, say, the character design and all. Every single enemy is a representation of some of James' repressed feelings, from his repressed psyche throughout the entire game. Of course, I won't spoil it, but when you learn about more of the story as you go along, more of that makes sense when you consider the enemies and what they represent. So that's something big, and just another perfect example. I remember, it's explained in this. One day, one of the character designers, or one of the enemy designers, was stumped for a new enemy design. Now, you know the enemy I'm talking about. He's technically the first enemy you see in the game. He's the one that's kind of under the bridge in that little dead end, where it looks like an enemy whose kind of head is morphed into his body, and his hands are like almost in a straitjacket in that kind of position. That enemy, he was stumped for design. And one day, he was working late in their Japanese Konami office, and one of his co-workers came in out of the rain. And it was lashing rain, it was dark, it was cloudy, all that stuff. And he had the hood up on his hoodie that he was wearing. He had his hands in the center pocket, those two, the pocket that you can put both your hands in the center. And he had the drawstrings completely pulled, only revealing his eyes on that hoodie. And that is essentially, when you look at that silhouette that would create, it's the enemy design. And that's where he got that, and that's where he created it. And it's all explained in this. And it's still stuck with me to this day, because this game is such a masterpiece that I wanted to remember that. It's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, games, some people consider them toys. Some people consider them pastimes or whatever. But there's so much love that goes into certain games and gaming as a whole. I realize that these days it's a bit more commercial and hollow for a lot of places and people. But it's evidence like that and things like that stick with you forever and create lasting memories. And I'm so thankful because of all that. Now, we will move on next to our Dreamcast games. So let's go with our Dreamcast stuff. Now, this one is like the N64. It's got a special place in many people's heart. And in my case, there's so much to talk about when it comes to the Sega Dreamcast. Unfortunately, I can't put it all into this video, or I would be here for about 20 hours just talking about the Dreamcast. But unfortunately, it's Sega's last console, their last proper home console. But much like the N64, you had a selection of third-party titles. But the majority of what was on the console and what it was praised for was the high quality first party stuff and the exclusive stuff. Now, there's not a huge collection here. A proper Dreamcast collection should be much bigger. But I'm going to give you an example. You have games like Blue Stinger. Now, this was an early game, and it's very hard to show on here. But a lot of the games on the Dreamcast, they had that Sega arcade feeling. Now, even if they weren't first-party Sega games, it's actually an Activision game, but it had that Sega arcade feeling that they were basically kings of at the time. Again, Choo Choo Rocket, Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio. It's games like that that had that feeling and that had it all. It was so good. And I know, I'm missing so much on the Dreamcast. It is one of the smaller collections I do have. Gauntlet Legacy, I remember playing the absolute crap out of that game, putting in so much time over it. It was ridiculous. I loved the arcade version. When I found out you could get on a Dreamcast, I was in love. Grandia 2, well, we already talked about Grandia 2, so it is a great game, great RPG. Phantasy Star Online and Online version 2, not episode 2, but it's a kind of an updated version. These ones I only bought fairly recently, within the last few years, because I couldn't get my hands on them back in the day. But this is one I do want to talk about. This one has a very special meaning and a very special story for me. So Resident Evil Code Veronica. Originally, what was going to be proper Resident Evil 3, but with all the delays and the Dreamcast and all, and developing for it and taking so much time and all that, it got changed. And the game that was going to be called Resident Evil, it was either Last Survivor or Lost Survivor, had a little bit of tweaks done to it and was eventually released as Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And then this was changed to Resident Evil Code Veronica. Now, by the way, this is a fantastic game. It's easily one of the best in the series. Not going to deny that. It's so good. It completely retains all of the stuff that made Resident Evil 1 and 2 so good and so great. And it brought it to the next generation with better graphics and better visuals. And just overall better gameplay. It was so great. Such an amazing game. But I'm going to give you my story on it. Actually, I'm going to give you two of my stories on it. This is one of the games where I could sit around and I was like, oh, I put so much time and mastered this game so much. I could be sitting there and I'd be thinking, oh, I'm bored. I have 2 hours to kill. What could I do? Oh, I know. I'll get an S rank on Code Veronica without getting hit and never saving the game. And I just sit down and completely beast mode the game because I was just so used to it and I was just so damn good at it because I put so much time into it. Now, that's one story. Let's go back to our other one, our more probably interesting one. So, back in the day, the internet wasn't what it is now. But you had to rely on physical magazines maybe once a month or so in order to get your gaming news and all that stuff. And sometimes you would hear about games a year in advance, 6 months in advance, maybe more. And sometimes you wouldn't. Sometimes you'd only hear about a game 2 weeks or a month before it came out. Resident Evil Code Veronica is one of those games where you didn't hear about it even existing at all until right before it came out. And that is evidenced by the fact that at the time, no one at all had even heard of this game. It wasn't even properly announced or anything like that. But there was a video game supply company, a wholesaler, in my town. Now, they're not here anymore, but there was a video game wholesaler that used to be there. And depending on when you called in, and you couldn't, it wasn't open to the public. But if you knocked on the door and you asked real nice, and depending on who you're talking to, you might get a game. You might be able to buy something off them. And of course, you were buying it at wholesale prices, so it was nice and cheap. You were also buying games that weren't out yet. You were buying pre-release games. You were also buying stuff along the lines of games that hadn't even been announced, haven't even been shown off. Or in the case of Resident Evil Code Veronica on the Dreamcast, like me, you bought this game 6 months. That's right, 6 months before it was even released. Before the game was even announced at all. This game was complete, was sent to suppliers and wholesalers, and was ready to sell and ship. I managed to get this game 6 months before anyone even knew it existed. It was a complete, obviously it was complete because you couldn't patch games and all back then, complete version of the game. And the best thing about it was I went home and I put an entire weekend into this because I picked it up on a Friday afternoon. Now, it gets better. I went back into school on the Monday or the Tuesday, whenever it was, and I was talking to a friend of mine. He was one of my great friends at the time, and he was almost as big into Resident Evil as I was. We were talking, he asked me, what did you do over the weekend? I was like, oh, playing the new Resident Evil game. I love it. It's so good. He's looking at me, he's like, well, Q, Resident Evil, a new Resident Evil game. What are you talking about? I know I'm getting excited. I'm talking a little bit fast. But I just said to him, you know what? Come over to my place after school today and I will show you. This game will blow your mind. And then it completely blew his mind when I showed him it. He didn't have a Dreamcast. He kind of looked at it and was like, who the fuck buys a Dreamcast? But he completely changed his tune on that. Once he saw this game, it was completely and utterly insanity and over the top. It's still such a great game. You know, funny enough, I do hope that someday they either do one proper, appropriate remake a la Resident Evil 2, or what I would be satisfied with in the meantime is if there's an existing HD remaster for this on the PS3 and Xbox 360, maybe port that and upgrade that a little bit to Steam. You know, do us all a favor. Now, this is very appropriate. This is very fitting. I'm recording this game room tour and all these different videos on several different days. Today, it is June 3rd, and every 3rd of every month, it's Shenmue Day. And it's only fitting that I talk about these two masterpiece games. But my problem is, how do I do it concisely and clearly and accurately enough to get my thoughts and feelings appropriately across on this game? Or on these games, these masterpieces, this series, whatever you want to call it. It's so hard to think of a way to portray it properly. They did so much. They basically changed the world of open world games. Now, like I said earlier, not in the same way as Grand Theft Auto 3 did, but look at RPGs, JRPGs, whatever it is. It's like after Shenmue happened, they all wanted to copy and emulate what that could do. Have a living, breathing, believable, existing world. Kind of a perpetual world that kept going on, kept moving along. Everyone existed. Everyone had a life. Everyone had everything. Everything was real. Everything was unique. And that was done in the 90s, based on the Japanese release of when Shenmue 1 was completed. So, every game felt like it was trying to copy that, and what it did. Thankfully, we have officially got Shenmue 3 going to happen in 2.5 months from now, the end of August 2019. After 20 years of waiting, 20 years of waiting from, I guess, the original launch of Shenmue, but I believe it's 17 years since the end of Shenmue 2. We'll finally get the conclusion, or the continuation, because we don't know if it's going to be a conclusion yet, of Ryo Hazuki's story, his old-school, Hong Kong-esque driven revenge tale, and Yu Suzuki's vision. And I can't wait for that. I highly recommend everyone play that. It's available on modern platforms. It's available on Xbox One. It's available on PS4. And it's available on PC. I highly suggest everyone check it out. It's just something special. Something absolutely special. But moving along, we do have two more to talk about. We will talk about both of them. Skies of Arcadia. Now, I did mention that with the Gamecube version previously, but before it was ported and enhanced for the Gamecube, Skies of Arcadia was a Dreamcast exclusive. And it's the same game. It does have a little bit of additional content and stuff in the Gamecube version, but it's a great game. It's a great JRPG. Highly recommend everyone play it. And like I said before, unfortunately, we will probably never see a HD port or a sequel or a remaster or a remake of it because the director of the game considers the best version of it already existed. So, it's kind of a shame, but it's still available for other people to play. And Sonic Adventure, our last little Dreamcast game here, Sonic Adventure. Now, the cool thing about Sonic Adventure is many people disagree with me in this point, but they're entitled to their wrong opinion. Sonic Adventure was one of the few games that made the transition from 2D platforming games to 3D platforming games properly. I love Sonic Adventure. There's so much good about it. So much of the design. Now, of course, there are flaws. I'm not gonna pretend they don't exist. But so much about it is great, and the music is just so over the top. It's Sonic R all over again, but in 3D multiplied by 10. It's so good. The gameplay is great. A lot of the kind of like in-jokes and the styling is great. Sure, the voice acting is a bit over the top and a bit, well, questionable, but it's still one of the games that has great gameplay, great visuals for the time. It played great for the most part, and in my opinion, it made the successful transformation from 2D platformer to 3D platformer. And it joins the ranks of stuff like Super Mario and Super Mario 64 to live in infamy forever. But that's it for Dreamcast games. That's it for Dreamcast, the almost end of the PS2, some Japanese Sega Saturn TurboGrafx CD, PC Engine CD, and the end of our PS1. So we can move on to next up. We have something else. So before we get into the 360 games, we'll move to a technically non-gaming little part of the stuff here just for a second. And it depends on what way you want to look at this. Some of them are comics, some of them are rule books, some of them are tabletop games, some of them are, well, just books and novels in general. But I mean, over here, we got our nice big series, all the deluxe 2-issue hardcover editions of Fables. It's a great series, I highly recommend it. It's what The Wolf Among Us, a game that you will soon no longer be able to ever play again, is based on. It's based on Fables. It's about, essentially, characters from nursery rhymes, from children's stories, and mythology, etc., stuff like that, all forced out of their own home and to live in secret in the real world. As kind of weird as that sounds, it's actually really good, and I highly recommend it for everyone out there. Other than that, we don't have a huge amount of stuff. We got some Warhammer 40k, some Codex, we got some rules and all too. We got some D&D 5th edition in there as well, because, why wouldn't you? That's fairly important stuff. Book-wise, these are only some of the ones, but we've got stuff like the Eternal City and Lord of Souls. It actually came free with my... I don't remember if it was Oblivion or Skyrim, but it came free with one of those from buying it too. Now, there's actually one other one here I do want to get really close and in-depth about. It's this little bad boy here. I saw this one day. Now, this is completely in Japanese, a language I don't speak, but it's an epic little book. It's essentially kind of like a 100% walkthrough to Secret of Mana. Now, even though I don't speak Japanese, it does have all the screenshots. It's got all gorgeous everything, because pixel art for the win. It's even got regular, proper artwork in there too. But because it's my favorite game of all time, naturally I had to have it. And I absolutely love it. I love it so much. It's so good. I'm just looking through. You've seen some of the stuff in there as well. It's just gorgeous. It's the kind of thing I would have killed for as a kid. All these large, full sprite size maps. It's amazing. I love it so much. But on top of all that, we got, say, Metro 2033, Metro 2034. We got the Bro Code. We got our little, it's a Fallout 2, the original manual for Fallout 2 on PC back in the day. What else do we have? That's just like a little program. We got Neuromancer. We got Metro 2035. Some big collection of detective comics. Some Batman Dead in the Family. Fist of the North Star. Like, kills me to not have them in proper way. We got Watchmen, Kick-Ass, a bunch of different comics, like random ones. I've got stuff like Metabots. There's Metal Gear Solid comics, Devil May Cry comics. There's a couple of Futurama comics. There's some stuff like that in there too. There's Mega Man comics. We got some Batman Killing Joke. Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader. There's a cool little Chrono Trigger one. These are the player's guides. Now, this is all the way at the bottom here, so I won't grab it out. But you've got stuff like Prima guides and all that too. But back in the day, for some of them, there was a Nintendo player's guide, which kind of operated a little bit differently on how they did it. It's still badass. It's really cool. I didn't buy it until I had finished the game multiple times, because it was more of a collectible at that point. Let's see what else we got. These are just kind of collectible guides and shit that I got over the years. Assassin's Creed. See, I always hated these because these all felt completely useless, even though they're different companies. Like, what do we have? Who makes this one? Alright, this one's Prima. BioShock is Brady Games. And then you've got, what's this, Metal Gear Solid 2? Yeah, this one is... That one doesn't say who it is. But let me give you a perfect example why all this is bullshit and why I'm not surprised at all that these companies have gone out of business. Assassin's Creed. Back then, I was an achievement hunter. I wanted 100% in every game. I wanted all the achievements, 1,000 gamer score in every game. The internet being what it was very hard to do at the time because it was a very early 360 game. And trying to get all the flags for all the achievements in Assassin's Creed 1 proved a little bit difficult. So I bought this in order to show the locations and stuff. The guide is wrong in multiple different ways. The maps are wrong. The physical list, the numbered list and all, is wrong multiple times. So it's basically useless for that. BioShock, same way as well. I bought this specifically to get all the Vox logs, the audio phone logs, whatever they're called, the gramophone logs. I can't remember the name of them. I bought this specifically to get all of them for the achievement. What happens? Oh look, lo and behold, yet again, the maps for all of them are wrong. Well, the maps for some of them are wrong, and the list and all as well that gives all the locations in number and name form and where to expect them is also wrong. So two guides that are absolutely useless in that regard. My MGS2 one I've never used properly because I could get all of that stuff myself. I just loved it so much that I went so hard in it that I managed to get it all myself. So I don't think anything in that one is wrong, but you get the idea. What else do we have in here? What is this? Specialist in Retro? Oh, it's a Secret of Mana themed issue. No, it's not. That's down here. What is that? Let's find out. We're going into uncharted territory here, lads. Oh, it's a copy of Retro Magazine that mainly focuses on all the old consoles and stuff like that. It's some really old stuff. It wasn't great. It was okay to read once, but that's about it. Collector's Edition Fallout 4 Survival Guide. It's essentially the guide to the game. I never actually used it. I just kind of bought it for collection purposes. This... Oh, Final Fantasy 13.3 Lightning Returns Guide as well. I bought this for like €1 brand new when it was on sale. I was clearing out all the stuff in work one day. I was like, oh, you know what? That's in there. Let's get rid of it. That's my Secret of Mana Collector edition of Retro. And my Zelda Hyrule Historia. And this is when I was trying to... I'm artistically useless, by the way, if anyone didn't know already, in which case you haven't been paying attention. But I bought this yonks ago. This was probably about 20, 25 years old. It's like how to draw anime and manga. And I am absolutely terrible at it, so I eventually gave up. Because, well, that's what any logical person does when they can't do something first time properly, isn't it, right? They just give up instantly and don't try to practice and get better. In all fairness, I did try to practice and get better. I just didn't get any better. So, that's it. That's for some of them. We'll move on. We'll move away from the books. We move back to some gaming stuff now, and we'll see how the rest of it goes. So, we're going to move on to our next one, but we're not going to start with the collectibles here. We're not going to start with the 360 games here. We're not going to start with whatever's in that little corner, but we will get to it now in a second. No. We're going to start with something that I had a brief fancy with a long, long time ago. You might remember the early design of the Xbox 360 and its models. And the fact that you could take the front off and replace the faceplate on it with ones with different designs, custom ones, or whatever. That's right. For a brief period of time, I collected those kind of faceplates. Now, I don't have too many of them, because I only kind of got ones I wanted. But I did get some cool ones, some fancy ones. I got one free with Far Cry 2. It's not an important one. It's average stuff. I didn't care about it. I did get one free with Dead Rising, which I used for a while because I love Dead Rising. Same with Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I got that one too. Same with Bioshock. This came from... The Bioshock one came from a special... like a launch party pack at 2K Games, or I'm not sure if it was at 2K or if it was at the studio that actually made it, Irrational or whichever it was called. But there was a launch pack and it came with a bunch of other stuff. There's a Bioshock mouse pad, Bioshock coasters, there was a plasmid syringe pen, and a couple of other things too. And this was actually included with it, and I picked one up. They're individually numbered on the back too, so there's only 5,100 of these in existence, and I have one of them, which is kind of cool. Also, probably more important in this regard, ones that I am more proud of, there was a good JRPG on the Xbox 360. It's from Namco Bandai, and it's called Eternal Sonata. And you might see these very high quality faceplates for the Xbox 360, all themed around the characters of Eternal Sonata. Now, these are really cool for several reasons. One, they look gorgeous, the art on it's great, and two, it's a great game. But specifically number 3 that I want to talk about is that these are officially licensed and made by Hori. And compared to any of these little ones that I pick up and mess around with, these feel considerably higher quality. Massively higher quality. It's completely different. This seems like the kind of thing you would buy cheap in GameStop for, I don't know, maybe $6.99. These kind of feel like the thing you would buy from an official store for maybe like 30 or 40 euro. They're very high quality. And hopefully it comes across. They're really good in that regard. Now, before we get on to the 360 games and the rest of the stuff in there, I do have to be very careful about this because I don't want to damage any of these. But we'll take a look at some physical, big box PC stuff. I only have a handful of the games. In fact, I only have 3 of them, as well as this bad boy. You might wonder what this is. This is Gamecube stuff. It was a keyboard with an adapter to plug into your Gamecube so you could play Phantasy Star online and chat really easy instead of just using the built-in software keyboard to make macros, or just the software keyboard. There was also a better version of it made by Hori. This is a Daytel one, but there was a different one made by Hori where it was actually the keyboard was in the middle of the controller and you had the controllers on each side. I'm sure if you Google Gamecube keyboard controller, you'll see it. It's ludicrous. I want one, but it's on hold. We're going to ignore the Wii balance board because, well, we don't like to talk about the Wii balance board, but we do like to talk about a physical Metal Gear Solid big box PC game. That's right. PC. Many people don't even know this exists. It did come with the VR missions and all in there too. But it gets better. It gets better. We are going old school. Remember this? Countless hours. And there's so much I can't even say about it because there's just too much. It's just so... We got it all. Got the expansion. Now, after the first 2, after the original game and the first expansion pack of The Sims, they stopped making them in big box over here. They started only putting them into DVD boxes. But this game is like helped shape my childhood in a way, because it's just so ingrained with how much I played it. I'm sure many of you out there are the same way. You grew up and this is probably one of your most played games. Come on, Wii balance board, don't get in my way. Don't be salty that you're completely irrelevant in modern era. Although I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo brought out a new version for you. But anyway, before we move on to the games, we will take a quick look at the last little bit of collectibles and all we got here. Duke Nukem, Duke Nukem, Duke Nukem. Came with Duke Nukem Forever. Not going to talk about it too much because the less said about that game, the better. Big Fallout 4 bobblehead. Got it free. Was supposed to be getting rid of some stuff in work and they had one at the time, so I bought it. Well, I didn't buy it, but you know what I mean. It was being thrown out, so I got it that way. What else do we have? We've got some Fate Stay Night. Back when I used to be into Fate Stay Night. Now, it was great at the time, but I kind of haven't picked them up in forever. 2 different characters, 2 different versions of Saber, who was a bit of a beast. Because why not? We got some quality Android at the back, because, well, we all love a little bit of DBZ. I don't even remember who this is. If any of you know, please let me know. I just can't remember. We have some more Fallout stuff. One of them I got free when I bought Fallout 4. The other one was included with my Fallout 3 Collector's Edition. But anyway, more Fallout bobbleheads. Why not? Blue Shell from Mario Kart Ultimate or Mario Kart WiiU. And some Helsing, because everyone loves Walter C. Dallness. I really hope I remembered his name. But the 2 obvious ones I kind of skipped over. Neon Genesis Evangelion. We have our lovely little Asuka in her plug suit. And we got Rey in her plug suit. I'll tell you a story about those 2. They were up in Dublin in a shop called Forbidden Planet. It's still up there. Big geek nerd shop, sells all anime and stuff. It was pretty much the only place you could get that kind of stuff back in the day. Now, here's the cool thing. They were originally €250 each. This was so long ago. I was in my teens and I had just got my first proper job. So I was making okay money. So I decided, I just got paid. I'm going to go up and I'm going to buy one of them because I could only afford one of them. I get up there. They were reduced to €125 each. So you could get the 2 of them for the price of what one of them was originally. Naturally, I bought both of them right there and then. There was no way I was not going to. and I still have them perfectly all to this day. So good. I love them. They're some of my earliest memories of that stuff, so they do have a lot of emotional attachment in that regard for it. Now, we have one more little bit to cover before we move on to our 360 games, and I am going to apologise for this one in advance because I just remembered that I forgot to clean this shelf. So it's going to look, woo lad, pretty bad. It's various random little leftover collectibles. They're more lower end stuff, nothing super important to worry about. I got some fancy dragons. An ex-girlfriend bought me for them because I was really into dragons at the time, but that was like 20 years ago, so not too much. We got some more Helsing. We got some Full Metal Alchemist in there too. We got some Buddy Christ, because why wouldn't you? We got some Resident Evil 2. Came in 3 different forms, 3 different packs. One of them was just all the Tyrant and his very multiple shape-shifting forms. These don't stand up right, they're all over the place. One was a Licker and Leon. One was a Zombie and Claire. We got some Fisted and North Star. I got that out of a gacha, believe it or not. We got a little Vincent Valentine one. My God, he's so filthy. Like I said, I forgot to clean this shelf when I was doing it. And yeah, Jin is in a bit of a bad state. We got some Chun-Li at the back. We got, I think that's a Play Arts I think that's a Play Arts version of Vincent before they split. Well, they used to have Play Arts and Play Arts Kai split into different ones, and I think that's just a basic Play Arts instead of, since they all moved them to Kai. And wow, that's so bad. Let's get that out of there. And I can't even remember where I got that. Apparently I'm a computer whiz. But that's pretty much it. Now we can move on to the meat of this section. The Xbox 360. So, Xbox 360, the fall of gaming, as many people sometimes refer to it as. Mainly because after the PS2 era and the PS2 generation, it felt like such a big step back in so many regards. Now, that's not to say there weren't some great games on there, which, of course, there were, and we'll see now in a second. But it just felt like with the sheer quantity and the amount of shovelware, diamonds in the rough, and just kind of overall questionable games. But anyway, we'll start going through the whole thing. We'll take a quick look at what we got. Alan Wake, big fan of Alan Wake. I think it's a really good game. Conversely, Alone in the Dark is absolute dirt. But see, this is what I want to talk about. Assassin's Creed. Okay, Assassin's Creed 1 is a great game. I love Assassin's Creed, and Altair is really good. He's the best character of all of them that I know of. Assassin's Creed 2, it built on the game and the game engine and the mechanics. It played a little bit better. It got rid of some of the problems evident from the first game. And Ezio's kind of a cool character. He's not as good as Altair, but I mean, he's still good enough. Now the problem, you might be wondering, Q, you stopped playing at Brotherhood. Why do you have Revelations? Well, boyos, let me fill you in on that little story. I bought Assassin's Creed 2. I played it, loved it. Bought Assassin's Creed Brotherhood when it came out. Never got around to playing it at launch. About a week before Assassin's Creed Revelations came out, I said, okay, I need to get caught up on the story. I'm going to start playing Brotherhood. So over the next few days at the time, I started playing Brotherhood. Revelations came out. I bought it just to have it so I could move on to it. I eventually got to the point in Brotherhood where I wanted to quit the game and never play it again. And I have since never played an Assassin's Creed game. But I already had Assassin's Creed Revelations at the time. This is our Batman Arkham City Collector's Edition. It's part of it. This is the one with the game in it. This, you know what? I'll open it just because it's fancy. We got Tara Strong, aka Harley, and we got Batman, aka Kevin Conroy. Now I just need to get Mark Hamill on there, and I'm sorted. That'll be amazing. You may be wondering, Q, why do you have 2 versions of Battlefield 3? Well, let me give you an example. Battlefield 3 Limited Edition I bought at launch. I played it for a while. Eventually I got so pissed off with the game, I won't say rage uninstalled or deleted. I rage opened the disc tray and snapped the disc into pieces while playing the game. Yeah, sometimes if a game gives you anger issues, you should probably stop playing it. Battlefield 3 Premium Edition. Q, why do you have Premium Edition? Why do you have a second version of this game? So I was trying to get a friend of mine. Well, let me pump it back a little bit. After I broke and quit Battlefield 3, a friend of mine, for however, like months and months and months, or whenever it was trying to get me to go back and buy another copy of Battlefield 3. Conversely, I was trying to get him to play Diablo 3 at the time as well. He wouldn't do it. He had a small Alienware laptop. It was more than enough to play Diablo, but at the same time, he wouldn't do it. So one day, we were in a store, and I said to him, I was just talking to him about Diablo and how he should play it and all, and he saw Battlefield there, and he said, listen, I'll buy you Battlefield Premium. And I was like, no, I don't want it. I don't want to play that game. And then he said, okay, you know what? I managed to, and I just said, okay, you know what? I will play Battlefield 3 with you and the guys if I buy you Diablo 3 and you play it with me and the others. So we came to a compromise. Technically, he bought me this copy of Battlefield 3. It also came with premium, so it was the pass and all too. And I bought him a copy of Diablo 3 that day. So even though they were the same price, it's just on principle alone. I didn't buy a copy of Battlefield and he didn't buy a copy of Diablo. So it worked out well in that regard. But moving along, BioShock. I still remember buying this copy of BioShock because this is technically a collector's edition. But I bought it on the same day as Blue Dragon because they both launched at the same day. And that was the same day I got my Xbox 360 Elite. Fun fact. BioShock 2, I'm going to die on this hill because I have said it before. BioShock 2 is a good game. It's not as good as BioShock 1, but the gameplay-wise, the quality of the mechanics and the gameplay are roughly about the same. Sure, it doesn't have the story and all too that's as good as the first one, but it's still a good game and I will die on that hill. Everyone hates BioShock 2 because it's not as good as BioShock 1. I still think it's a good game, unlike the next one, Black Site. Blue Dragon's a good JRPG. It's developed by Mistwalker Studios, who was founded by the father of Final Fantasy, I'm going to mess up his name. Let's just call him Sakaguchi. Hironobu Sakaguchi. I hope I got that right. Founded by that. Good game. I recommend people play it. It's available on Xbox One backwards compatibility, so try that. Modern Warfare. A game that I kind of revolutionized. I credit two big games to to helping propel console multiplayer online games. The first one is Halo 2 on the OG Xbox. The next one is Modern Warfare on the 360. Now, the reason I use the 360 version is because Xbox Live was considerably better than the PSN. The 360 was considerably better than the PS3 in most regards. And you can see why, based on the legacy of this game and the sequels and all too. And many people are already wondering, oh Q, you've got a really weird order for all these games, for Call of Duty games. Yes, there's a reason for that, and it's because I'm an absolute stickler for accuracy in that regard. And, well, not many people know this, but after Modern Warfare 1 was such a runaway success, since they were going like Modern Warfare, Black Ops, or World at War, blah blah blah, the Treyarch and Infinity Ward stuff, after Modern Warfare 1, they tried to rebrand Call of Duty as Modern Warfare as its own separate series. You will notice that it's here somewhere. I don't remember where it is. But you'll notice that in Modern Warfare 2, it's never really once referred to as Call of Duty anywhere. It's its own separate thing. It's just Modern Warfare 2. It's not Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. It's just completely separate in that regard. Now, that didn't work out for them, so they went back to Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, and even in later publishings of Modern Warfare 2, it's referred to as Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Black Ops, not much to say about it. A great multiplayer game. I funny enough, halfway through the story, I predicted the twist, and I called it exactly, and I was completely right about that. Modern Warfare 3, not much to say about it. Catherine. Not Catherine, where is Catherine? Fun little one, signed by Catherine. This Catherine. I need to get it signed by the other one on the inside. It's a reversible cover, so the other Catherine's on the inside. So I need to get that signed too if Laura Bailey ever comes over. Child of Eden, the game I credit buying my Kinect for. I bought this game. I started playing it. It was kind of fun. Reminded me of Rez, as you would expect, for exact reasons. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to play this with Kinect. Went down, bought Kinect. That was it. What else we don't have? Clive Barker's Jericho. I'm only going to talk about this for 1 second because I have one thing to mention. I am the first person in Ireland that had 1,000 gamer score in Jericho. There used to be a site back in the day where you could check games and achievements and stuff. You could narrow it down by country and filter gamer tags and all that stuff. And I had it completed by midnight on launch day, and I had 1,000 gamer score in that, and I was the first person in Ireland to do so. I didn't check it in the world, but I was the first person in Ireland to do so. Condemned is a great game. Condemned 2 is not. Condemned is brilliant, especially because it got me to buy an Xbox 360 several months before I planned to do it. There was nothing for me to buy at launch, really, nothing that I was super interested in. A friend of mine got a 360 at launch, and he got Condemned with it. I borrowed it off him, and the console and the game. I played it, was like, holy shit, this is really good. So instead of waiting for Oblivion a few months later, I bought it early, and I borrowed Condemned off him and played it that way. Not much to say other than that, except for Dead Rising. I love this game. It's so great. Just like Dead Rising 2. I really highly recommend those games to anyone. Obviously, play the PC versions nowadays. They're so much better, and the new ports and all are done really well. Same with Dead Space. Dead Space 1 is a fantastic game, despite it being an EA game. Dead Space 2 kind of got off the rails a little bit, and you could see that it was going to be the death of the series. Then the third one came out, and yes, it absolutely was the death of the series. Similar to Dragon Age Origins, great game, was pretty much 98% complete by the time that EA bought BioWare, and they didn't have the chance to ruin it. But then, well, Dragon Age 2 came out, and you just saw how they ruined it. Duke Nukem Forever. Do I even have anything I don't even want to say anything about Duke Nukem Forever at just this point. I mean, other than pop culture references for days. What do we got on our next one? Eternal Sonata. This is the one with the faceplates. It's a good JRPG. It's very musical based. A lot of the stuff is named after musical notes or people, prominent musical features or artists and whatever. And Fallout 3. This game is like almost legendary in its own regard. Still a really good game. Still a great game. But I will say New Vegas is better, to many people's ire and dismay. There's nothing huge to talk about in the next couple. Final Fantasy 11, that's kind of important, but we'll get to that later in a different one. 13, 13-2. You're, Q, where's 13-3? The official title for Final Fantasy 13-3 is actually Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13, so it starts with an L, so it goes over there. Gears of War. This bad boy is something important to me. This is one of the big 360 games, one of the big 360 series. Now, here's a real funny one for I almost skipped Gears of War. I was playing it, or I was looking at it and all before, looking at all the gameplay before it came out, and I looked at it. I thought it looked decent, but I didn't want to play it at the time. I was working full time. I didn't have the time. I had other stuff to do in my life. And then a friend of mine said, "Oh yeah, they've confirmed it's going to have co-op online multiplayer story." I'm like, okay, now I'm in. Now I'm committed. And well, yeah. Now you can see how convinced and committed I am to it. Unfortunately, Gears of War Judgment didn't hold up the same way, but you get the idea. GTA 4, GTA 5. There's not much I can say about this that I haven't already said about GTA 3. So, I'll just move on. It's unfair. Halo 3, Halo 3 ODST, Halo 4, Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, Halo Reach, and even to an extent Halo Wars. It's such a great series for the most part. Halo 4 kind of did lose its way a little bit, but it's still a decent game. Makes sense considering it's developed by 343 Industries and not Bungie. But Halo 3, even ODST, and Reach, and obviously the original. Amazing, fantastic, and I cannot wait to have them on the PC in the remastered forms. They were so great even back then, but they're going to be even better soon. Kane and Lynch, I think that's a very fun game to an extent. I loved the concept of the multiplayer of it, but it didn't last too long. Kane and Lynch 2 was absolute dirt. Connect came through my Connect. LA Noire, good game. Left 4 Dead 2, great games. Better on PC, of course. And Lightning Returns Final Fantasy. Oh, you know what? Just for the sake of it. Boom, signed by Lightning. They're also signed by Lightning, but it's the box inside, so I didn't open it and look at it. Now, this next one. This is a very, very important game for you JRPG guys out there. Lost Odyssey. An Xbox 360 exclusive, 4 discs, was fairly early on in the lifespan of the game, or lifespan of the console. Again, Mistwalker Studios, Hironobu Sakaguchi, and this game is fantastic. It's one of the best JRPGs on the console. Now, it's not saying much considering there's not too many on there, but it's a great game. And if it was re-released on something else today, it is on backwards compatibility on Xbox One. But if it was re-released on like Steam, or properly ported on Xbox One or PS4 or something, many people would be very happy with the quality of this game. It's a really good game. Mass Effect. The game has a legacy within itself. Not a massive amount I need to talk about on there, although, unfortunately, while Mass Effect 2 was a good game, Mass Effect 3 pretty much fucking ruined the entire thing that everyone hates. My Mass Effect is also signed by the same girl as Lightning, Ali Hillis, because she's Liara. She's also Liara. But what else do we have? Max Payne 3, amazing version on PC. It's a good game overall, but it's nowhere near as good as Max Payne 1 and 2. This, as you would expect, remastered and ported by Bluepoint Games, you would of course understand that their 2 ports are fantastic. Never a fan of Peace Walker, but MGS 2 and 3 are fantastic. I play it fairly frequently digitally on my Xbox One now that I can. And there's what I was saying earlier. I know we took a look at it. No Call of Duty name branding anywhere on it. They were trying to break it into its own thing. It didn't work. Even though it did sell well and all, just the lack of the name Call of Duty kind of confused a lot of people, and they didn't have it on there, so they eventually did republish it with that too. Good old launch game. Rough in so many regards, but I still have so much time and invested all. I remember staying up till like 6 a.m. in my friend's house in his sitting room, like 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. His mother would get up for work the next day and see that we were still there playing co-op on Dark Agent all night, trying to 100% every level. We eventually got it. It was worth it. It was worth it. So damn worth it. Where are we? This is another one. I spent, because of my love of Phantasy Star on the Gamecube, naturally I had to play Phantasy Star Universe for a considerable amount of time. Fun fact, someone who's probably watching this video that I met through this game all those years ago, and I kind of fell out of contact with, but recently got in touch again with, all because of this game. Well, originally anyway, but I just think that's especially funny. So many hundreds, if not thousands of hours sank into that game alone. What else we got? There's not so much other important stuff to talk about on here, except for Resident Evil 5. I love Resident Evil 5. It's my guilty pleasure game. It's a terrible Resident Evil game, but it's very good as a co-op shooter game. It's also signed by Wesker somewhere. Where did Wesker sign this? I can't remember. Was it on this? It might not have been. Was it on here? Oh, there it is. There it is. Wesker signed it. I was pretty happy about that. I knew it was on there somewhere. I knew I got it signed. I was kind of worried that it might have like faded off or something, but that would have been disappointment. But I love this game, and I'll give you an extra little bit of a fun fact in there too. I've told the story about 100 times, but I'm going to tell it 100 times more. When the first DLC for Resident Evil 5 came out, Lost in Nightmares, I finished it. I went back and did it again, 100% and all that stuff. And I managed to be like number 5 or 6 or 10 on the world leaderboards. So I'm thinking, okay, if I put a little bit of time into this, I can do a little bit better. Then I consistently got number 1. I was number 1 in the world on the Xbox 360 leaderboards for that. And then there was a guy, he was number 2, he was a German dude, and he was like maybe 100 points behind me. And then he'd play a little bit, he'd beat me by 100 points, I'd beat his score by 100 points, etc., etc. Then I was probably the first person in the world to figure it out, but there was a way you could improve the Wesker boss battle at the end of the DLC. So I managed to get a huge bump in points by like 10,000 points, and no one had figured that out, and no one could catch up with me because of that huge point boost you get at the end. Now, I was sitting pretty on top for about a week, 2 weeks, whenever it was. Went on holidays to the US for about 2 weeks. Came back. Everyone had destroyed my score by about 50,000 points. So, at that point, I just gave up. Said it wasn't for me anymore. Let's see, what else we got in here? Go. Silent Hill, Silent Hill, Silent Hill. Terrible game. Terrible game. Terrible ports and remaster of a great game and a good game. The good game being Silent Hill 3. So many people love it, but I'm kind of mixed on it. What else we got? Star Ocean, not a great game. Stranglehold. Tales of Vesperia, definitely a great game. One of the best of the series. I highly recommend anyone out there play it, even if you do play the new remastered version of it. Oblivion, Skyrim, 2 games that I put hundreds of hours into. Last Remnant is completely overrated. Any of you guys out there thinking about picking up the remastered version on PS4, avoid yourself the headache and the issue. What else we got? Orange Box, because, apparently playing that on a console is a good idea. Time Shift, Ghost Recon, Ghost Recon 2, Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2. Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2 are games I love. Terrorist Hunt, all the way. I remember putting so much time into all of that. But that's it for the majority of our Xbox 360. We do have 1 or 2 others mentioned in a little bit down the line. But for the most part, that's the 360 over. So let's hit up whatever's next. So next up we can look at the mini collector's edition corner because, well, we've seen the others. But this one doesn't have anything super major in it. There's only really one thing in here I especially like, which we get to in a minute. But other than that, we'll take a quick look. We do have some stuff on display as well. We got the MGS5 Phantom Pain hand. Yeah, that's unfortunate, especially because the Japanese version was so much better. They got a full-size scale replica hand. We got, I think it was a quarter size, a half size. It's fairly small. It's kind of annoying. But of course, naturally, as my favourite film ever is Terminator 2, I did give it the thumbs up. This next one. This one is shameful. Shameful. One of my most hated games of all time. One of the worst games I have ever played. And yes, I did go and splurge. It was it's the Destiny Ghost from the Ghost Edition. It has the Dinklebot installed on it, not Nolanbot or Nordbot, whichever one you want to call him. But this was during my phase of, if I was going to buy a game, I was going to buy the biggest, baddest collector's edition of that game. It bit me in the arse. In fact, Destiny 2 or Destiny 1 might have been the one that broke that tradition for me. I can't remember, but it feels bad, man. It feels bad, man. Aiden Pierce, Mr. Watch Dogs himself. The game that you can see the big DedSec edition. The game that I broke my not buying any games ever again from Ubisoft rule for. It happened after Assassin's Creed. Oh, well, I can't remember which came first. I think it was either Assassin's Creed, Brotherhood, or Splinter Cell Conviction. I can't remember which one was the latest game at the time. And between the Assassin's Creed incident, and let's call it the Splinter Cell incident, I don't remember which one was which. But between the two of them, I just gave up. And I broke that to buy Watch Dogs. And of course, that bit me in the arse because the game is trash. So, and not to mention heavily downgraded from what we were originally shown, which was a pain within itself. Sigh. We have Assassin's Creed 2 Black Edition. There's also a White Edition. There was 2 places in my town at the time selling them. One had the Black Edition, one had the White Edition. Just for lols and posterity almost. I got the Black Edition. I liked that one a little bit more. A friend of mine liked the White Edition a little bit more. And I just said, you know what? We won't. Usually the two of us would buy both of them in that case. But I said just for reasons and whatnot, we won't bother. We'll keep one each. That'll be my thing. That'll be his thing, you know. What else we got? Speaking of Splinter Cell Conviction, we have the game that ruined the series. Conviction has a cheap little action figure and cheap little statue, whatever, inside it. Completely changed the game. Everything you know and love about Splinter Cell, Chaos Theory, Pandora Tomorrow, Double Agent, you throw all of that out the window when you think of Splinter Cell Conviction. Completely changed it to an all-out super third-person action game. I haven't played Splinter Cell Blacklist, or is it called Whitelist? I think it's called Blacklist. Haven't played that, but Well, given the fact that we haven't had a new game in, what, 5, 6, 7 years since, I think that says it all. I know there's one rumored to be coming out. Hell, by the time this video comes out, it might even be officially announced or something. But who knows? Who knows? Extra little Legend of Zelda mug, which is just for posterity and, well, a collector's value, hence why it's still in there. Assassin's Creed 1 Collector's Edition. The game that started my love for the series, followed swiftly by the game that killed it. Well, no, that's not true, because Assassin's Creed 2 was a great game, but Brotherhood is what killed it for me. Now, this is the big Collector's Edition, has a giant statue of Altair inside it. Altair, of course, being the best, compared to Ezio, who is obviously a good character too. Shout out to my boy Roger Craig Smith. But no, Altair is that little bit better. You can think of Ezio has the charismatic quality and all, but he's good at what he does. But Altair is that arrogant prick that I all too identify with. And that's why Altair is my boy. That's why he's my boy. Now this one is kind of jammed in here at the back. This is a BioShock 2 Collector's Edition. Has a big vinyl box, and I believe it has 2 vinyl LP soundtracks inside it as well. Kind of a cool looking box, at least when you open it up and you see the front of it, but it's not too bad. I will still die on that hill that is a good game. Sure, the story isn't as good as BioShock 1, but the gameplay is still solid, and it's still Rapture, so it's still solid. This big maroon looking thing. You know, right, this is the Elder Scrolls Online PC Collector's Edition. The original game, not any of the expansions or anything. I originally bought that game just for the statue. I played the closed beta or the closed alpha, whatever it is, when it was first coming out. I was like, wow, this game is absolutely awful. And I wasn't going to play it at all. And of course I still didn't play it at all because I have the expansion or the Collector's Edition just for that reason. Just for the statue. But that's the massive Elder Scrolls fan in me rather than Elder Scrolls Online. I did go and try to play it once more after they migrated it all over. When they changed it to the whole, was a buy to play model. I tried to play it once and got bored within like 2 hours. But this is one of my favorites. This is one of my favorite Collector's Editions. The Fallout 3 Collector's Edition. It comes in the lunchbox. It has a little bobblehead, which I believe is one of these two ones. But it has like a small art book and all too. But I don't know what it is. Collector's Editions can just grab me and feel proper for the randomest of reasons. And I'm not going to open it up and look inside it because there's nothing super major or super important in there. But with the amount of time and love I spent with Fallout 3, and just, there's, like I said, there's something about the Collector's Edition that just does it for me. I'm not sure if it's just because it's so lore appropriate and it looks like it could be something straight out of the game. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. It's that je ne sais quoi. But I love this Collector's Edition. And I'm even going to give you a little bit of a story about Fallout 3. When this game launched, I still remember the day it launched. I got up early so I could go pick it up first thing, straight away in the morning. Now, I was a cripple at the time. I was on crutches. So I remember I had to leave super early to go down to get there on time. Usually it would take me about 10 minutes to walk from there to GameStop. But, as I was on crutches, it would take me about half an hour to make the same trip. So naturally, I went up, made sure I was there early, hobbled my ass home, and spent ridiculous amounts of time in this. And I still love it. I do hope that in the next few days, or maybe just prior, depending on when I actually get this video out, we do see the rumoured Fallout 3 Special Edition, aka Fallout 3 Remastered. Not just because I want to see it better and remastered, but mainly because Fallout 3 has an absolutely terrible PC version. It was made back in the Windows Vista days, and even if you heavily mod it for support, for stability on Windows 7 or Windows 10, it still runs like crap and can be an absolute disaster and can just crash at any time basically. So that's unfortunate because I do want to replay it. The best way to play Fallout 3 at the moment is backwards compatible on an Xbox One X, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to play it on an Xbox One X. I want to play it with a mouse and keyboard, with high frame rate, and high resolution and the ability to mod all the stuff I want. I don't want to play it on Xbox One X. And that's really it. Oh, I forgot to mention, the BioShock, this is the PC good old Windows Vista, am I right? PC Collector's Edition for Bioshock. We didn't get this one on the console over here, but we did get it on PC. It's still fully sealed. I know it comes with the same steelbook that my 360 version has, but I've just never opened it. It's got a little statue of Big Daddy. I mean, I have Bioshock and Bioshock 2 and Bioshock Remastered and all on Steam at this point, so I don't really need to open it. It's more for collector's value. I do that a lot. That's going to be a recurring theme you're going to see here, unfortunately. Now, before we move on to the next proper game section, I'm going to take a second to give a shout out to my Rock Band and my Guitar Hero. Now, these are the Guitar Hero ones. They're actually Wii Guitar Hero ones. Funny story about that. I used to be an achievement hunter in the early days of the Xbox 360. I would go out of my way at 1,000 point every game. I would do things I wouldn't usually do. I would look up all the locations of all the audio logs or whatever it is I needed to do to get my 1,000 points. Now, it was going strong for the longest time, but I was very proud of how I curated my 360 profile. So, even though I wanted to play Rock Band, because that was when the music and rhythm games were starting to get really popular and whatnot, I didn't want it to taint my profile. So I bought it on the Wii, of all things, just so it wouldn't show up. Now, that of course went down the drain much, much later, but it did work out to my benefit because, well, back in the day, these came in really handy for multiple different reasons. Between party stuff, overall fun, and hey, you know that guy where like everyone hangs out, checks out, he's like, oh, that guy's got the Wii, we go over, party with stuff, and, well, you know, maybe one or two spend a night, am I right? It's all thanks to the Wii. Anyway, this is the Guitar Hero one. No, this is the Rock Band one. This one here. This is my boy Rock Band. I can't remember why I bought Rock Band. I think I wanted to get back into rhythm games, or I wanted a new one. And I picked up the huge, full band collector's set. I've got the drums behind me. I've got the guitar. The microphone is somewhere. But that's basically it. I have the game on 360. It came in useful. It was fun. I remember me and my friend doing the endless playlist thing on the hardest difficulty, and it took us a few hours, and we got stuck on, I think it was the third last or second last song or something like that. I want to say it was called something like Green Hills and Blue Skies or something to that effect. Anyway, and yeah, I got kind of. We spent hours on it, and it just did not work. Let me move some stuff with one hand here, and we'll talk about what else we got hidden in behind it. Thanks, everything falling over. I want to do this without knocking everything over. Elite controller, nothing much to say. It's one of my two Elite controllers. One's for my PC, one is for my Xbox. My A40s, I don't really use these for several reasons. One, I'm not a huge fan of wearing these kind of headsets in certain situations. I have a big surround sound setup, 5.1 speakers, so I would much prefer that. I do use this sometimes if I want like quality stuff really late at night or something, and I still need to chat at the same time. It comes in kind of handy. I got them nice and cheap during a sale. There was a big sale on them in work at the time, and then I got staff discount on top of it, so I did pick them up. That wasn't too bad. Now I was happy about this one, the Mixamp Pro. This is the previous gen Mixamp. I had to buy this separately, but this is the previous gen Mixamp, so you could use current gen Astros or the A50s or whatever with your previous gen consoles, which is something I wanted to do given my setup at the time. I had a setup using, say, I had my 360 and PS3 separately and all, and I wanted to be able to use headphones with them specifically, so I got this bad boy to use my other Astros with them. It came in handy for a while. You know, I kind of forgot I had it. I might actually set it up on my new one because that would probably be a bit better. Thank you, video, for this great idea. And the A40 mod kit. This is the Black Ops. Is it Black Ops 2 or 3? I can't. Hang on. What do we got? This is the Black Ops 3 mod kit. I bought this one to exchange. You can change all the pieces and all on these. I wanted to change the outside of the ear cups, which was basically out here, because I wanted them to be a full closed design. These are semi-open, whereas these ones are full closed if you put them on. However, I didn't like the look and feel of them. I did like these because they're kind of the leather feel, whereas these are the kind of a foam Velcro, not Velcro, foam, maybe velour feel or something to that effect. But overall, I didn't like how it looked and felt, so I just went back. Supposedly this microphone is better, but I just said, YOLO, I'll give up on it at that point. It was nice and cheap. It was reduced to clear, so and then I got discounted on top of it. One of my few other figures left over, Final Fantasy 12 Play Arts Kai, Fran from 12, and Cindy from 15. Cindy's not open and on display because I just don't have the space for it. I will do it eventually. Fran is, which we'll see later, but that's beside the point. What else we got? Back to my foray into comics and visual novels and stuff. The Walking Dead. Now, over here, especially where I live in this part of the country, there's no comic book stores, there's no anything like that around here. There's no pop culture stores, none of that stuff. Obviously, I'm not counting GameStop because they don't sell that stuff. Now, if you live in Dublin, it's okay. There's a couple of comic book stores up there, and they do the individual issues every month or whenever they come out, and that's fine. You can pick them up, but I don't have that luxury, and you need specific standing orders and stuff, specific amounts. I think you need a minimum of 3 or 4 different comics every month for them to possibly send it out to you in bulk, and that's just not viable for what I want. So I have to buy these ones, the volumes. Now, these ones come out roughly every 6 months, and it usually incorporates about 6 months of regular issues into them. So my current one we got is 31? Yeah, 31. That's my current one. 32 is out in August, so it's out in 2 months from now. I'm looking forward to it. Allegedly, I really enjoyed the Walking Dead series. I remember picking up the first one a few years ago, and I decided, I'll buy this as a test. I read it. I loved it. I went right back down and bought like 4 more of them straight away. And then I finished that, and a few days later, I bought a few more of them, and a few more of them, a few more of them. And I don't know, ever since maybe about halfway through, give or take, I've been buying them every 6 or so months whenever they come out. What else we got? Book-wise, there's not much. These are kind of meme books. They are, these 3 of them. If you've ever, I was big into watching Castle at one point, so these were the meme ones I bought for them. I've never read them. I do hopefully imply, not imply, I don't know what word I was looking for there. I do hopefully plan and intend, there you go, to read them at some point. I'm generally a fan of I'm a fan of sci-fi, obviously, and some fantasy stuff too, but I'm also a fan of crime novels and whatnot too. I did pick up a handful of them. There's a few more all over the place too, not just in this room, but I can't even remember reading these. I remember the start of this one. I don't even remember this one. I don't remember anything about this one other than maybe like the first few pages, but that's about it. It's the same with the Dwarf series. This one is some big famous series, and I was looking to get into some fantasy at the time, and I bought it, but I never read it. There's a few more books in the series, but I don't think I even started it. What else we got? We got some. Oh yes, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Well, I'm sure everyone out there knows that that's Blade Runner. So I've never read the book version of. Oh, let me rephrase that. I've never completely read the book version. Every time I read it, I get about halfway through, and then I stop for whatever reason. It's not like I'm not enjoying myself. I just stop for whatever reason. And every time I go back to it a couple of weeks or months later or whatever, I decide, you know what, I'm going to have to start over. And the same thing happens every time. It really annoys me. What else we got? The Walking Dead ones. I remember, I'm trying to see which one is which. So The Fall of the Governor Part 1 is, okay. So Rise of the Governor, I read first. I read completely. The Road to Woodbury, I read completely. I started reading The Fall of the Governor Part 1, and I kind of just phased out on it for a while. That could have been the time in around when I stopped watching a TV show. I don't remember. And I've never touched Part 2, but I did buy it with the intent of reading it. Scott Pilgrim's not actually mine. I borrowed it with the intent of reading it. One of my friends at the time, he knew that Scott Pilgrim was my favorite film ever, or my second favorite film ever, and he offered to lend me that. I never got a chance to read it, and yeah, I still have it. These two, there's probably not much to say about them, mainly because, well, they're famous in their own right, and you don't really need to talk about them. I'm sure any of you out there who's semi-interested in literature and books, you've already read them and you know pretty much everything about it. other than that, we can move on to some CD soundtracks next. Now, these ones have accumulated from so many years. Some of them are ancient, some of them are not so ancient. But like we got one of the there's so many Ghost in the Shell standalone complex soundtracks that I don't even remember what number this one is. It's a big fancy one though. It's kind of a collector's edition one. It has multiple different discs. I think there's like 4 discs or something inside it. It comes with a couple of extras as well, including a Tachikoma USB key, which is still in there. And I believe that had stuff like Ghost in the Shell wallpapers and all in it. Now, the funny thing about it is, based on when this was produced, those wallpapers are pretty low resolution by today's standards. But anyway, you see what I'm getting at. We got Chrono Trigger original soundtrack, naturally as one of the best soundtracks in a video game of all time. I have to have it, especially because it's one of the best games of all time too. Black Mages 1, 2, and 3. It's, admittedly, I haven't, ever since the third album released, I haven't checked if they've done anything new. They could have, for all I know, but I've never even heard it mentioned in passing, a reference, anything to anything new. So I'm assuming that they only have the 3 of them, and I didn't miss out in that regard. I don't remember why I picked up the Final Fantasy V soundtrack. That's a very strange and weird one to me in that regard. But other than that, this one here, we have Terranigma. Terranigma, good soundtrack. It's that game I mentioned back on the Super Nintendo in the Illusion of Gaia, Illusion of Time, Terranigma Soul Blazer series that America didn't get. Next one up is a sound. It's a small special sound selection from Chrono Trigger. It's only got I think it's about 20 something tracks on it, and they're all spread across different CDs from let's say the full soundtrack. Different CDs, different variants, a couple of remixes, a couple of arrangements, and all too. I'm trying to remember what this one is, this 2-disc bad boy. I'm trying to remember what this is without, well, you know what, I'm going to have to get up and look. Oh, it's Persona. Okay, that's whoops. That is, this is after coming out now. That is one of my Persona soundtracks. Because PlayAsia are beast mode. Wait, what is this? Oh, it's Persona FES. Okay, so that's the one. Yeah, because PlayAsia naturally are beasts, I decided that one time they were having a soundtrack sale. And I picked up a bunch of soundtracks for them. Now, specifically, I picked up Persona 3, Persona 3 FES, Persona 3, Persona 3 FES, Persona 4, and Persona 5 soundtrack. I wanted to pick up the Persona 4 Golden one, but that was out of stock. So that was a little bit, sad face too. Final Fantasy 7 soundtrack, it would not be right and it would not be correct if I did not own that, because, well, it's one of the most influential games of all time. Come at me for saying that, I don't care. And Secret of Mana and Secret of Mana 2 soundtracks. My favorite game ever and one of my favorite games ever. Love the music in both of them. This one is Secret of Mana has 44 different tracks in it. This is like 100. This is a triple disc set. This is just one. So that's all good. Now, I'm not going to break out into the big stack behind here. I will for the games and all too. I will for all this stuff, but not for these books. Those books are a collection. They're not a finished collection. They're not a complete collection, because every few weeks, I believe it was every 2 weeks, they started. It's called. You know what? I'm going to get up so you can see the top of them. They have It's a Warhammer 40k, 40,000, whatever you want to call it, collection. And there's so many different novels and spin-offs about lore and story and all in that universe. So they started releasing these really easily in this book form, like a nice hardback book form. Also, when you put them all together in the proper order, they make a huge kind of mural. Now, I was buying them. I wanted to set up an order in my standing thing in my local bookshop, my local, whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't really call it a bookshop. Well, I suppose I would. But they wouldn't create an order for me. They said, oh, we don't do that kind of thing anymore. I'm like, okay, as long as you get at least one in every time. So they originally got 4 with issue 1. I was the only one that bought one. Then when they got issue 2 in, they only got 2 of them. I bought one. Then from then on, they only got 1 of each in consecutively after that. Naturally, I was the one that bought it. Now, at about episode or volume 7 or 8, I've got about 30 of them at the moment. At number 7 or 8, they made a mistake. They didn't put out that one. And I asked to see if they had it. I asked to see if it was in the back, if it was kept for someone, obviously me. And they said, no, we just don't have it. We couldn't find it. It wasn't there. So let's just say it was number 7. 2 weeks pass. The same thing happens with number 8. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I give up. That's it. 2 weeks later, number 10 comes out. I'm like, okay, hang on. Something can be done here. So I got that one. Now, I had to go to the publisher to order the 2 back issues I missed. And that gave me so many problems. I put in the order. I was debited for the order, credited for... Well, yeah, I was debited for the order. It says, please wait up to 28 days for delivery. And after 28 days, please contact us, blah, blah, blah. So I contact them after 28 days because it hasn't arrived. They said, oh, we've no record of your payment, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, hang on. I have a bank statement and a transaction ID. Here they are about why, this order was made and why it was paid. And, oh, yes, sir, we get that created for you. I have it created right now, blah, blah, blah. You should have them within a few days. A week later, they arrive. That's okay. Then about a month later, I get a letter from them. A physical letter, I know. It's like, oh, your payment, please make a payment on your order reference, blah, blah, blah. I ordered it in, I think it was October, maybe November. They didn't fully get to ship it until something like January or something like that, or whenever all the time had passed, in around that all. So they referenced the order at the time I emailed them after a month or so. Now, don't forget, I had provided my transaction ID and my payment and all at the time that I had made originally. And I just ignored it because I figured it was probably an oversight because they had to wait. Or they had to create the order because they messed it up or something. Now, another month passes. I get another letter. Again, I ignore it. The third month in a row, I get another one. It said, oh, we have passed your information onto debt collection agencies and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hang on. Now, this is going to impact my credit and this is going to look bad on me when I have physical proof that I've already provided. So, I got back to them anyway. And I was like, I have paid for this. I have showed you the thing. Here's the transaction ID. Here's the screenshot. There was something else in there too. So they went through with it anyway. And a couple of days later, they said to me, oh yes, we found that. Not even an apology, by the way. And they just said, yes, we found it. That order has been completed. And okay, that was the end of it. Now, that was a pain within itself. But after, I don't know, about maybe 10 more of these, maybe 20, whatever it was at the time, again, the same thing happened. My store was not either putting them out or was not putting them on display or whatever. And I gave up. It turns out about 4 weeks later, the same thing had happened. They had kept 2 or not displayed 2 or didn't get them in or whatever it was. And then the rest of them started coming back in. Then they went for about 2 or 3 more issues or volumes, book-wise, that didn't sell because naturally I wasn't buying them. And there was no way I was dealing with getting the stuff from the publisher again. Hatchet Paperworks, by the way, stay the fuck away from them. And yeah, that's it. So that's why I have like half the collection. There's 70 something of them. Oh, no, I wouldn't mind. I think I have about 30, but there's about 72 of them, I think it is. There's still a good read. I'm still going to be able to have a significant amount of stuff to read. I just would have liked the entire thing. There's my little tirade on that. I kind of just ramble and rant a bit too much. But yeah, let's move on to some actual games. The reason why you're here. So next up we're going to hit some Sega goodness on this one. We got some Master System, we got some Mega Drive, and we even got some Sega Saturn. But we'll go through all that now in a second in more detail. Now, Master System. Actually, you know what? WiiU official Smash Gamecube adapter. Personally, I wish the whole GameCube thing and the legacy and all from the controller would just die in a fire, but I do kind of, well, at least in regards to Smash, but I do find it kind of funny that Nintendo has consistently created failed controllers time and time again to the point where this, from the early 2000s, is the standard play controller because, well, everything they've made since had been trash. You can take that as you want with the Pro Controller. It feels great, a lot of it is great, it looks great, it handles great, but it does have 2 major problems, like a terrible D-pad and digital triggers. Digital triggers, of course, being completely 100% unacceptable. Now, that's beside the point. Let's go back to Sega. Someone who, well, I can't even say knows what they're doing because that's why they're out of business in the hardware market, I guess. But we got a couple of Master System games. Now, these were bought for specific reasons. I knew I was getting my analog Mega SG. And at the time, I was thinking, okay, you know what? I'd like to try the variant of Sonic the Hedgehog 1, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. That's the best Sonic game, by the way. Well, if the Mega Drive version. Streets of Rage, which if you've ever seen the Master System version of Streets of Rage, it's crazy. It's so good for an 8-bit system. And Paperboy. Now, Paperboy is Paperboy. It just wouldn't be right if I didn't own it, basically. Not so much I can talk about in the Master System version, but let's move on. And if you're wondering, by the way, why these are in what seems like... See, they're different. They're different. Like, these are working top-down, so it's like P... Wait. No. That's wrong. I'm going to have to change that. S, SO2, ST, P, so this one should be at the bottom. I put them this way so that when I do eventually rearrange everything and I just convert it right hand side 90 degrees onto a shelf, it's already in the proper order, starting from like left to right. That makes sense to me, even if some people look at it and say, Q, why is your stuff reverse alphabetical order? Like, no, it doesn't work that way. Anyway, let's start in reverse then, since that's the case. Revenge of Shinobi, the first one is okay, the third one is okay, but the second one is... Ooh, that's the one everyone likes. Tasmania, not much to say. Not as good as you remember. I remember loving it, but played it on the Mega SG. Not a fun time. Streets of Rage 1 and 2. There's so much I could say about these games. Some amazing quality beat-em-ups, especially on home platforms as well. When you think of the likes of what the Super Nintendo had, this was one of the cases where the Mega Drive, Sega, did what Nintendo don't. Now, of course, there were a few great ones on the Super Nintendo too, but it always felt like the Mega Drive stuff, especially Streets of Rage 2, was that little bit better. The Sonic trilogy, there's not much I can say about it. Many people would say Sonic 3 or Sonic 3 and Knuckles, if you've got the Sonic and Knuckles variant, is the best Sonic game of all time. I think Sonic 2, that's my favourite Sonic game of all time. But the whole trilogy in general is great. Believe it or not, I still think Sonic 3 is the weakest one of them all, but many people hate my opinion in that regard. They can be wrong all they want. This is probably my favourite Mega Drive game. Haunting, starring Poltergeist. And believe it or not, it's an EA game too. Back when they did creative original ideas, but that was a long, long time ago. And Aladdin. Now, I forgot to mention, actually, I have a cart-only version of Aladdin on the Super Nintendo. It was in that stack we saw near the start. But this is one of the few times, where Aladdin on the Mega Drive version of a game, was considered better than the Super Nintendo version of the game, which was very, very rare. Now, the reason for that is the art style, everything that was done with it. They actually had in-house Disney artists come and help them to make it look better, look proper, look feel, everything. So it was great in that regard. Now, I don't know, there's not much to say about a Sega Saturn. I played a Sega Saturn way back in the day. Once, I only bought my Sega Saturn about maybe 3 or 4 years ago for myself, and I've only picked up a handful of games since. I'm going to give you a great story about it now in a minute. But, before that, we'll look at the entire library that I have. Worms. We all know Worms, be it on so many different platforms at this point. We all love it. Virtua Fighter, I only bought because it's kind of meme reasons. Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider is almost infamous for how bad it is on the Sega Saturn, but we'll get to that in a minute. Street Fighter 2 Alpha, or Street Fighter Alpha 2, Street Fighter Alpha Warrior's Dreams. Sega Saturn, because of the great D-pad, the amazing godlike D-pad, is brilliant for fighting games, specifically Street Fighter games. I never liked the Alpha series, so I figured this would probably be the best platform to go and try get into the Alpha series, because, well, if it's got the great D-pad and the buttons, it might actually work, as well as with the quality of a lot of the ports on the Saturn, as well as the Dreamcast. A lot of the time, it could do arcade perfect. Now, I'm not sure if these two versions are arcade perfect, but it's definitely close. And Bubble Bobble and Rainbow Islands. I love both of those games. There's also the enhanced one in there too that I don't really care for. But I love Bubble Bobble. I love Rainbow Islands. I had both of them on the Commodore 64. Now, it's great stuff. Resident Evil. I'm going to give you an extra little tidbit of Resident Evil here. This is really, really interesting. So we all know that the Sega Saturn it doesn't do polygons. It does, what are they called? Like quadrilaterals or whatever it's called anyway. And because of that, a lot of the actual 3D based stuff didn't look as good. Now, however, because Resident Evil is all pre-rendered artwork backgrounds, except for things like zombies and moving characters, you can visibly notice that the backgrounds in Resident Evil on the Sega Saturn look better at a higher resolution, or they look better and look higher resolution and more detailed than the PlayStation version. And if you look at it, because there's so little work that they have to put into the 3D environment or 3D models, they can basically use 100% of the power for that. And in my opinion, they look a little bit more detailed. I could be wrong, but it certainly looks that way. I've compared them side by side, and it definitely looks a little bit better in every way on Resident Evil on the Saturn. However, it is still a Sega Saturn, so there's still some questionable stuff missing. Now, Tomb Raider, I did promise a story in relation to this. When I got my Sega Saturn a few years ago, I bought it at a weekend away for Comic-Con. We were back in the hotel after I bought it, me and two friends, and we decided we'd turn on the Sega Saturn. I connected it all up. I bought, what did I buy? I got Tomb Raider, and I think I only had Tomb Raider actually at the time. I bought the two of them together. They threw in Tomb Raider for free, €5, so they gave it to me for nothing. But anyway, here's the good story for you. Because Tomb Raider looks and runs so poorly, because it's a complete 3D environment game on the Sega Saturn, at one point near the very start, it felt like I got stuck. It felt like I literally got stuck in place. I couldn't move forward on what felt like a completely flat ground. But because of whatever the way the camera was, and the way the graphics and all looked, and the way the visuals were rendered, once I turned the camera ever so slightly, it turned out there was a small bump in the ground that I couldn't work over, and it wasn't noticeable from almost any angle because of how poorly it was rendered. I just remember seeing it. I couldn't walk forward. My friends were looking and they were as confused as I was, and I was just like, what the hell is going on? You guys see this, right? And then as soon as I turned the camera, at the same time, I just turned around, I was like, yo, look at that, did you see it? And my friends are fucking in bits, rolling around, laughing. It's so... Oh, what a console. What a console. But that's it for our retro Saturn stuff anyway. We'll move on next to our Wii U and even our Wii. I'll move these out of the way. We get a proper look at our Wii. So, in the Wii U, if you're wondering why these are here, it's just because of how it's all stored. It's much easier to put them there. The Wii U. One of the biggest failures of all time. Now, don't get me wrong, there were a handful, I stress a very small handful, of good games on there. But it was just an absolute, abject, factual failure. I get a lot of people commenting on videos whenever I insult the Wii U about how it's a failure. People will always say, oh, you know, but it got to introduce this, that, and the other, and such and such and such and such was a great game. And I'm looking at them like, okay, yes, there were a half a dozen, if maybe a dozen good games on there. The console sold massively poorly. It did not turn a profit. And it caused the company to be a commercial flop in that regard and lose considerable amounts of money. Not just lower profits, but a considerable loss in that division every year. That is a failure. That is a commercial failure. It's an objective failure. But anyway, enough bashing with the Wii U. There's plenty of time to do that when you look at the lack of library on here. You'll notice that almost every game I have on the Wii U is either a Nintendo game or an exclusive third-party game. Because just like the Nintendo Switch, there's no reason to buy an inferior get-running and looking game on this platform when it's available better everywhere else. Some people just don't understand that. So anyway, let's get going. We got Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Back when Retro Studios actually made games. Mario Kart 8. Now this is a fantastic game. This is an amazing game. It's arguably the best Mario Kart game. And that's kind of evidenced, believe it or not, by the fact is when you look at the sales numbers of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on Switch, I'm pretty sure it's the biggest and best selling game. I think it even outsold Smash at this point, or the two of them are close together, but I mean that's evidence. That is a really good one. It's one of the first few Nintendo games to have proper DLC, paid DLC at least anyway, and it's done really well and really right. Oh my god, who is this? Q is praising Nintendo on something in the Wii U. Yeah, when they do something right, I'm going to praise them for it. The problem is they just don't ever do anything right, almost. Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, again, the best version of that game because, well, I mean, why would you play a 3DS one when you can play a Wii U one? Or why would you play the Wii one when you can play the Wii U one? However, it's still not a great version of the game, which is a problem. Super Mario Bros. Wii U, or Super Mario Bros. U. I'm not a huge fan of the new Super Mario Bros. Series. It's not bad, it's just not as great as everyone else makes it out to be. It doesn't feel like an old school side-scrolling Mario, so I think I'd just rather them work on the proper 3D ones. Nintendo Land, bunch of, like, what are they, mini-game gimmicks to try out the controller when you bought it. Came with my Wii U. Super Luigi U, kind of disappointed I bought it as a game, but it's alright for collector's purposes. Pokken Tournament, I literally only bought for one reason, and that was to get the card that came with it. Project Zero, Maiden of the Blackwater. I played this game last year. I played it originally when it came out, but I didn't play much of it. But I played it last year. It's a great idea. It's a pretty good game. However, it's marred by two reasons. The idea that you can lift up and use the Wii U gamepad as the camera and all as well. The idea is great. It's just very unwieldy and kind of implemented poorly. And of course, because it's a Wii U game, the performance suffers heavily with massively slow frame rates and massively variable frame rates because, well, there's effects that it just can't handle. Splatoon. Fun fact. Everyone's going to be, oh, Q has Splatoon. He must have loved it. Why did he buy Splatoon 2? I was gifted this copy of Splatoon 1 by a friend. He got 2 copies and he gave me one. I've never played this version of Splatoon because it is not my kind of game. I played it once. Not even this one, but I played it once back in the day. It just wasn't it for me. It's just no. Super Mario 3D World is a good game. It's one of the weaker 3D Mario games, but that's still a very... I always hate saying stuff like that because it's still a very high quality game for the most part, and being the worst of the best is still... it's still high praise. I mean, you look at all the other companies, all the other platforms, or whatever, who makes them, with their 3D action adventure games or their 3D platforming games and whatnot. Even though Super Mario 3D World wasn't great, it was still better than 90% of what was out there. You see my point? Smash for Wii U, kind of the reason I stopped playing Smash and the reason I haven't bought Smash Ultimate. It kind of just gave out on me. Breath of the Wild, I have a Wii U copy, never opened, just for collector's purposes. Wind Waker HD, obviously it's a better version. It looks great because the cel-shaded art style at a higher resolution really works. Twilight Princess HD, it helps a bit. It's still a bit of a rough game. Tokyo Mirage Sessions, #FE. It's a great game. I played this last year as well. I played it a little bit when it came out, but I properly went back and did the whole thing last year. This is a great Atlas JRPG. Yes, that's right. The same company who makes Persona and Shin Megami Tensei. This is an exclusive Wii U game. They may eventually... I think this is the one game that deserves a port to the Switch, mainly because it's so underrated and it's stuck on this piece of crap console and almost no one can properly appreciate it. It's a good game, it's a good JRPG. It's a little bit bubblegum and over the top at the start, or at least the art style and a lot of the stuff you see in it, but the quality of gameplay is still there, and that's the important thing at the end of the day for a JRPG. Unfortunately, the same thing can't be said for Xenoblade Chronicles X. I was so disappointed after playing Xenoblade Chronicles 1. I do want to go back and complete X at some point. And Zombie U. Believe it or not, probably the one game that used the gamepad controller properly and very, very well. There's a bunch of others that used it too. Hell, almost everything did. But a lot of it just felt like it was just a complete write-off or wasn't important or anything. But Zombie U actually made it feel really, really good in that regard. I'll leave the red box for our Wii section because that is next. Now, the sooner we get away from this failure, the better. So let's hit up our Wii, or as I like to call it, the Switch Zero. Because, well, the Switch, if you look at the Wii, is just the Wii 2.0. You're not fooling me with those Joy-Cons. They're just Wiimote 2.0. The fact that you get almost no proper support and you just get... what is it, like shovelware and toned down exclusives that you can't run, or toned down third party games you can't run. Yeah, you see my point. But anyway, this one. The Super Mario All-Stars 25th Anniversary Edition. I haven't opened this, just because I wanted it for collector's value and all too. I still have my Super Nintendo card of it, although the battery on it is questionable. But anyway, let's keep going. We look at the Wii. Animal Crossing, Let's Go to the City. Believe it or not, I played a lot of that. And hell, you could even play it online. Yes, that's right, online on the Wii, when it worked better than the Switch. Imagine that. Donkey Kong Country Returns, I was kind of very unhappy about. Endless Ocean was a good kind of, what do you call it? I won't call it exploration game. It was a good chill game. You could just kind of swim around the ocean looking at stuff. It was pretty chill. Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Great game. I will say it's probably the worst Fire Emblem game. But again, that's just like Mario on the Wii U. It feels like it's doing it a disservice. It's still really good in most regards, but it's still probably the worst one. So, what do we got? Galaxy. I already gave you the Guitar Hero story. Harvest Moon. I love Harvest Moon, so naturally I was going to get that one. Link's Crossbow Trainer. I can't even remember why I bought. Mario Kart Wii. Great game. So much fun to play, even if it was on the Wii. Mario Party 8. If you had the right setup, the right people and all to play with, Mario Party games are always great. Mario and Sonic at the Olympics and Mario Strikers Charge Football. I'm going to give you a story about Mario and Sonic at the Olympics. So one day, me and my friend were playing Mario and Sonic at the Olympics. We were doing all the different stuff. We were trying all the different stories, all the different everything. Sports, all the different everything. Or as, EA would say, sports. But I can't remember if it was sprinting or swimming. That you held the controller in one hand, the Joy-Con, the Wiimote and the nunchuck in the other, and you moved them up and down in alternate sequence. Like you'd move your left hand down and your right hand up at the same time, and then vice versa. Now, whatever it was, be it sprinting or swimming, like I said, I don't remember. We were playing like crazy. We were playing until like 2 o'clock in the morning. At one point, I almost fell off my chair, just exhausted because of all of that. But eventually, like we were always beating each other's scores by maybe 1/10 of a second, or 1/100th of a second. But eventually he got a score it was maybe like an entire half second ahead of me that I couldn't beat. And then after he left, which was at about, I don't know, 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that, I tried it a few more times, and I beat his score, I beat his time by 1/1000th of a second, since that's how they measure them. It's in up to 1,000. I sent him a picture of it. Oh, he was not happy. That's probably still saved on there. But my point is that just like the Switch, the Wii U, the Sega Saturn, even the Wii, no matter what, as long as there's a good game on there or a fun game, that you can create good memories and experiences with friends. And that's the important thing, I guess, to an extent. What else have we got here? The Metal Slug Anthology, naturally, because why wouldn't you? Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, we don't like to talk about, especially, at least you'll notice that Metroid Other M is conspicuously absent from my collection. There's a reason for that. It's why I don't own Metroid Federation Farce. But what else we got? Monster Hunter, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, we know all about that. The sequel-ish thing to Knights was okay. No More Heroes, I kind of enjoyed. Pandora's Tower was one of those games. I never actually got to play it properly. Pokemon Battle Revolution, never bothered. We got Punch-Out, Red Steel. Red Steel kind of... woolad. Resident Evil The Umbrella Chronicles. I'm actually missing the Dark Side Chronicles. I only noticed that right now. And Secret Files... I always call it things like Tungasa. But what else do we have? What is that in there? I can't see it. Oh, Super Punch-Out, is it? Super Paper Mario. Okay, yeah, that was actually really good on the Wii, believe it or not. But it was no Super Mario Galaxy. I never picked up Galaxy 2. Maybe I should have. Smash Brawl, Last Story. We already talked about Last Story before. Last Story has been analyzed way back in the day about its visuals and stuff. It actually runs at a consistently lower resolution and polygon count and texture size than PS2 games. Yeah. Now you see why I believe graphics don't make a game, but they can break a game. And in The Last Story, they broke a game. Skyward Sword, I never fully completed. I'm holding out hope for a Switch remaster, just in one condition, that they no longer force you to use the waggle controls and the Joy-Cons. I will gladly play Skyward Sword from start to finish with a Pro controller. Twilight Princess, this is the one I bought originally back in the day, because I know it came out on both, but this was supposed, you would have thought back in the day would have been the better one, but no, it turns out the Gamecube version was better. The two Trauma Center games are great fun. I love them. They're crazy. They got delayed for so long over here. WarioWare Smooth Moves. It's like Mario Party. It's fun. Wii Fit, Wii Sports, Xenoblade Chronicles. Wii Fit I'm not going to talk about. Wii Sports I put so much fun into, so much time, and had so much fun with, especially with all my friends. Wii Tennis for the win. Baseball was crap. Bowling was great, and boxing was fun too. But tennis was where it's at. But Xenoblade Chronicles, this game needs to be mentioned, because despite this will go perfectly in tandem with what I said a minute ago. Despite being trapped on this terrible, out of date, underperforming, standard definition, terrible control having console, this is one of the finest RPGs of the generation. Xenoblade Chronicles is one of the finest RPGs of the PS3, Wii, and Xbox 360 era. It's up there with games like Lost Odyssey, and even to an extent, depending on what way you classify it, Mass Effect. That's a fantastic game, Xenoblade Chronicles. It's such a shame that Xenoblade Chronicles X and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 are so crap. But I guess you can't have it all. Unfortunately, they didn't get to go out on a high note. But I will. So let's see what's next. So we got a small little top shelf of more collectibles. Now, nothing huge in here, nothing major to talk about. Although there's one or two things I do really like on it. We'll ignore the Diamond Dogs because I hate that game. Crisis Core headphones, they came with my PSP. What else we got? It's a Nintendo Paperweight. Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. I got it free when I bought Majora's Mask. And, whoops. These are the ones I was talking about. The Bioshock Launch Party coasters. Yeah. Major, I know, right? Black Ops little explosive car thingy. I've never used it, but technically, it is the very first, remote control car I've ever owned. I was that one kid who never had a remote control car, but everyone else did. I never did, unfortunately. Put these back in. No, that'll do. We got Naruto. Now, funny enough, I bought Ultimate Ninja Storm 4 Collector's Edition just because it was on sale one day. And I looked at this. I'm like, is that supposed to be Naruto? What's going on? He looks completely different and there's so much stuff. Now, at that point, I hadn't even started Naruto Shippuden. So, now I didn't play the game because I knew it would be full of spoilers. But I looked at this and was like, why does he look so different? Why is he dressed so different? What's up with his hand? This, that, and the other. I didn't know what was going on. But of course, now I know. So, I won't spoil it here if you've never seen it. But you get the idea. Sniper Wolf. I don't know how to pronounce the proper name of the series, but like Bishunanjo or Bishujo or whatever it is. Thingy. Sniper Wolf is Bay, naturally. So, I mean, why wouldn't I buy that? What else we got? Our good old, is it Modern Warfare 2? I want to say Modern Warfare 2. Collector's Edition with functioning night vision goggles. I remember using them all of twice, and now they've just sat there and gathered dust until I've cleaned them off before this video. I also did get these cool little dog tags with Fallout 4. Fallout 4. They actually have some weight to them, unlike you'd expect from a lot of dog tags, or a lot of extra stuff that you'd get. These actually do feel relatively decent quality, unlike, you know, Fallout 76, where they would just, oh yeah, here's a canvas bag, and they give you a shitty nylon one. Speaking of which, that's just about to be rectified. But anyway, what else we got back here? There's a little small medal that came with Black Ops Collector's Edition. We got the big, this is the the big BioShock mouse pad that also came with that. And I do have one of those, I think it's a 15th anniversary Street Fighter 2 controllers. Now my one is a Chun-Li one. You know what? Let's get this out. Just because. So this is our Chun-Li one. There's also a Ryu one, and I'm knocking everything over. Good job, Q. Good job. There's also a Ryu one, and I don't know if there's any others than that. But it's pretty funky. What was it? Officially Street Fighter anniversary. It didn't say it. Yeah, 15th. I mean, that's cool. And I don't know if you can see it properly, but... No, you can't see it through the camera, but... Oh, you can. When you move, this goes. So it's her lightning kicks and all. That's cool. I remember picking that up in the UK a long time ago. Probably... I picked it up in Game in the UK one day when I was over there with some friends. It was actually the time I was over there for Video Games Live. Where did I put my Black Ops medal? My Call of Duty medal. This is the most professional video ever, guys. Don't worry. I'm so good at what I do. But anyway, that's it. Now we're going to move on to the meat and veg. There's some of the important stuff. Whoa. That's right. It's time for the wall of shame. So due to editing problems and whatnot, I'm going to have to split this into different parts. It's going to be 2 parts, but this is the end of the first one. Hope you enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one.